This is The Rich Eisen Show.
Who the is that guy?
Live from The Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
So, Ariel Helwani, is Conor McGregor the new Brett Favre of sports?
Download and podcast at richeisenshow.com.
Do I think he will fight again? Yes. I just think he's very frustrated right now.
Today's guests, Washington Post columnist Robert Klemko, New Orleans Saints linebacker Demario Davis, NFL Chief Medical Officer Dr. Alan Sills, plus ESPN MLB host Karl Ravech. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
All right, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Rich Eisen Show. I'm your humble host sitting here in Los Angeles, California. Another 3-hour ride right here on youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show, Sirius XM channel 211, right after the Dan Patrick Show every day. We say hello to those audiences. We will say hello to the audience on NBCSN in about an hour from now. Between then and now, Robert Klemko, formerly of Sports Illustrated, now of the Washington Post, he will join us. He spent a lot of time in the city of Minneapolis. Demario Davis, the teammate of Drew Brees, is one way to put it. He's a New Orleans Saints linebacker, is another way to put it. He's also visiting several cities. He's visiting 5 cities in 5 days as part of his work in social justice. And he will be joining us to discuss everything going on in his life. Dr. Alan Sills, paging Dr. Alan Sills to the Rich Eisen Show. He is the Chief Medical Officer of the National Football League. He will join us in our final hour with Karl Ravech after him. Karl with a scoop yesterday, some scoopage, to use the Glazer phrase, about what's going on in the conversations between Major League Baseball and the Players Association. Chris Brockman and Mike Del Tufo have joined us as they always do from their post. Good to see you guys. Well, I have in my hand the 9 pages of the important part of the memo that came out from the NFL yesterday. It's the health and safety protocols that have been placed in the inboxes of all 32 National Football League teams, saying this is what you need to do to keep everybody safe. And it is a lot. It is a lot. And that's why we're having Dr. Alan Sills on. He is basically at the top of the flow chart of instructing teams about what the protocols need to be to keep everybody healthy and safe once players do return as expected in late July. It is possible some players might be cleared to return by the end of this month. Coaches are already back in the buildings. And the buildings are being retrofitted right now. I proffer to say, the way you look at it, because this is the stuff that I want to kind of focus on when it comes out, because this is the important stuff that NFL teams need to get down now so we can have a season. And we can have a season as safe as possible, and people might not test positive, and we'll figure out what happens when that happens. But they're going to need additional locker room space in all these places. They might have to bring in like triple wides and place them outside during training camp, because you're going to, basically they're going to be marking on the ground, how far away you need to be from one another in workstations, meeting rooms. They need distance markers to assure spacing. Rearranging and removing furniture. This is serious business coming up. There's going to be certain hallways you can only walk one way down. All high-touch surfaces and common areas in the facility have to be cleaned at least 3 times a day with hospital-grade EPA List N disinfectants. That's how deep they're getting into it. Players are going to have to disinfect all their material, all their cell phones when they walk in the door. All the equipment managers at these teams.
Oh my gosh! Like the weight room.
They're gonna be working every single practice, every single time, every helmet, every single piece of equipment needs to be cleaned once it's all done. So on and so forth. Equipment cleaning and disinfecting is part V, part 5. They use Roman numerals. It's the NFL. Food service. Meal rooms have to be limited to only Tier 1 and Tier 2 individuals. So here's the deal. There's 3 types of individuals. Tier 1, your players and anybody who needs access to players. Tier 2 is, there's only going to be 20 of them. You have to designate who these people are before they walk in the door for training camp. You got to basically be on it's kind of like your, without, disease and infection, your 50th birthday party, Mike.
Yes, there are levels.
You had three
different
tiers.
levels.
You had three tiers of individuals for your birthday party.
Yes, you have the full lanyard. You're allowed all over. Just
access.
yellow wristband. You can hang here.
You need that X for the all access.
Yep.
Tier 1 is basically players and anybody who needs access to players, like coaches.
Training staff.
Right? Maximum number of 60 players on the roster. So if it's training camp and you're a player on the roster, but you're tier 2,
Yeah, you're not
disinfect your playbooks before you're handing them in. Team physicians, head and strength and conditioning coach, and head equipment manager. Those are tier 1 individuals. They get access to the old restricted areas, and you could guess what the restricted areas are. And then tier 2, there's only 20 of them, and you got to figure out who they are. It's interesting. An owner of a team is not even listed as a tier 1 person. I guess they don't count as a tier 1 person.
I mean, they're going anyway.
They're going.
Yeah, they're going.
And then tier 3 is anyone who does not require close contact with tier 1 individuals, operational personnel, in-house media and broadcast personnel, field manager, field maintenance providers, so on and so forth. Those people are only allowed in the restricted areas when no one from tier 1 is around. They're just going to say, if one tier 1 individual is here, sorry, tier 3 person, you can't go there. Nothing about testing in here yet. Anyone who's a tier 2 individual has to wear PPE when they're in the building. Surgical masks, gloves, cloth masks must be laundered daily. Gloves are required for staff in frequent contact with others, mandatory for those who work with food and refill supplies. The club must maintain a supply of the following PPE for the use of medical staff to treat players who become symptomatic. And this is straight out of an ICU. N95 masks, gowns, gloves, full face shields, goggles, like the whole works, man. Does not say here, however, what happens if a player tests positive and what they're going to be testing. This is just about just walking in the door for training camp. Dr. Alan Sills will be joining us. I have lots of questions, man.
Wow.
Because the NFL has figured this thing out best they can to keep everyone healthy and everyone apart, and lockers are going to be 6 feet apart. That's it. And they're going to try and keep it clean. So I don't think players are going to be dressing at home. Like, they're going to go. And we're going to figure out who tests positive and who doesn't, and figure out what you do then. Dr. Alan Sills, as I mentioned, is going to be joining us on the program. Demario Davis and Robert Klemko, so there'll be a lot of football on our minds. Dalvin Cook, I like Dalvin Cook a heck of a lot.
I do too.
Okay, he's really
good.
outstanding.
At the football, yeah.
When healthy. Sorry to say that.
Yeah, I mean, he did
When
lose
healthy.
his rookie year.
When
yeah.
healthy.
Yep. Okay.
He's already having his social distancing protocols all set for training camp. He's not coming. Adam Schefter tweeting out, Dalvin Cook no longer will participate in any team-related activities until and unless he receives a quote-unquote reasonable deal. He's out, a source told ESPN. Without a reasonable deal, he will not be participating. He's missed 17 games due to injury.
I wouldn't have expected it to be that high.
17 games due to injury. He played 4 games in 2017, 11 in 2018, and then we're like, okay, he's going to be healthy. He's going to have a great season. And he did have a great season. He had an amazing season that he couldn't finish. The Vikings were kind of rotating him in and out to keep him fresh. His shoulder wasn't holding up, right? It was his shoulder last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Last year, yeah.
The knee injury, as we all know, coming from Florida State.
Yeah, it cost his
When healthy, he is dynamite, man, and a game changer of the first variety in the NFL. 1 year left at $1.3 million on his contract. I understand why he wants some more scratch. But he's talking about Christian McCaffrey money. Do you know how many games Christian McCaffrey has missed due to injury so far? That would be 0. Full Blutarski.
0.
That's the only thing I would counsel Dalvin Cook. I understand $1.3 million 1 year, $1.3 million. That in COVID-19 land, COVID-19 land. But Melvin Gordon's on line one, man. That's all I would like to tell you. Melvin Gordon is on line one. Melvin Gordon had many great moments with the Chargers, many of them. And he did put his knee on the line and came back in a game against the Arizona Cardinals he had no business being in, and he got his knee blown up again. I never, ever, ever tell players they shouldn't try and get theirs. Try and get yours when you can. You have to try and get yours when you can. You must.
Have to.
Certainly when you're in your first go-round as a running back before you hit 30. Go get it. But, man, at this rate that he has been missing games, the Vikings are not going to pay him like Christian McCaffrey. I could tell him and his representatives that right now. And he could be sitting there saying, watch, what are they going to do without me? Not be as good. That's a fact. That's a fact. But if he wants to be paid like the way that the Carolina Panthers have paid Christian McCaffrey, he is going to be sitting at home. That's the only way to put it. Rick Spielman and Zimmer and the rest of the team and Kubiak, who's there now, and all of them they could tell him, we love you so much. You are so important to this team. You please come in. Can they find some sort of middle ground where he's not paid $1.3 million this year? And the reason why he wasn't a first-round running back is unfair. I could understand that he could sit there, too, is that I got screwed, all the red flags about me that I have proven everybody wrong about. That's why I dropped that. And obviously you could say his health history as well. All the crap that was circulating about him prior to the draft that turned out to be absolutely a non-factor for him as a professional running back in the NFL. I'd understand why he'd be sitting at home saying, my contract and me being paid the way I'm being paid right now, I got screwed by the draft process. But I'll just repeat again. If the stance is, I want to be the highest paid running back in the league, I want to be paid more than Christian McCaffrey, who has missed 0 games, and I have not been able to finish a season yet. I have yet to go from start to finish as a healthy running back in this league. That is not going to end well for him. I would counsel that right here, right now. Find a middle ground.
Would you give him the Melvin Gordon offer, the $10 million that Gordon famously turned down?
If that's offered to him, he should jump on that in 2 seconds.
Would you offer him?
Oh, look, man, I'm a nice guy. I you know what I mean? Like,
if you're running,
I'd be like, if I'm the Vikings, this
say
kid
you're
is
Rick Spielman. Say you're running the Vikings.
With him not answering the bell, it's the only thing. But he can't. You can't. It's not like he gets hurt because he didn't work hard, or he hasn't gotten his body ready, or he hasn't done all the right things.
Right.
He's done all the right things. He's a superstar when he's healthy in this league. He's a transformative offensive player when he's healthy in this league.
No doubt about that.
He's just not that healthy in this league.
That's a problem.
And his contract is up, and he has a rightful demand to be paid more money. I would pay him the $10 million, yeah. If I had it. I don't know what their cap situation is. I don't know if he'd take it. Let's bring you more up in line now, Dalvin. Come on in.
All right, let's look at some of these 2017 running backs. Would you pay any of these guys before you paid Dalvin Cook? Joe Mixon. Would you pay Joe Mixon or Dalvin Cook first?
Give me that one more time, please, Chris.
All right, so 2017 draft class. So,
yes.
So Leonard Fournette did not get extended. He's playing out. Christian McCaffrey just broke the bank. Those are the first 2 picks of the 2017 running back draft class. Dalvin Cook next up. He wants to get paid. Would you pay any of these other guys before Dalvin Cook? Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, Aaron Jones.
Kamara and Jones, I would.
That's a good draft class, by the way.
Mixon has apparently stayed clean. He has. Yeah. I haven't been around him. His history still.
Yes, indeed.
But I'm just sitting here in Southern California, totally removed from what he's done in the community there, what he's like in that locker room, or what he's like, period.
This draft class is stacked.
Kamara is remarkable. And that's going to be the next on the Saints paying hit list right there. And Aaron Jones, you know how I feel about him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's a superstar. He is a superstar.
Maybe I'll do that for a poll today.
So Robert Klemko wrote about Dalvin Cook's pre-draft experience. He'll be joining us again in a few minutes' time on this front. And Todd Gurley passed a physical, according to Adam Schefter.
I saw that.
There you go. With his physical behind him, Gurley can now focus on his preparation for a bounce-back season. I love the way Adam writes.
But you can't read that without doing
280 characters.
The Caliendo Schefter voice. Yeah. After having an agreement with Atlanta.
Todd Gurley finally was able to fly to Atlanta, where he took and passed his Falcons physical Monday per source.
Hey, man, I hope he's awesome.
Dude.
I hope he's awesome.
Come on.
Love Todd Gurley.
And they love him there in Atlanta.
Absolutely.
And they love him there in the state of Georgia.
Big favorite in my house.
And he's wearing Deion's 21.
Let's go.
High step it. Just show my knees fine. Hold it up. High step it on in the end zone. Point to Deion's. Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't think he's got a banner in there. Does he have a banner in there? I haven't been to the
I don't know. Yes,
I did. I went to the new one for the Super Bowl. I didn't see it.
Yesterday, you were killing people off. Now we're giving out banners.
Oh, my gosh.
Exactly.
He did in the old Georgia Dome. That's the house that he built.
He built that, yeah.
I'm killing people. That was a fun conversation with Josh Gad yesterday, by the way. Everybody should seek it out if you missed it. YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show.
I'm going to do that.
You know, I'll wait till the second hour. We'll get into Gurley a little bit here, and I'll just give you a heads up on where I'm going with it.
Okay.
If you want to think about the other Bermuda Triangle inexplicable
things that we'll never know the answers to
in the NFL in the last 10 years.
I mean, off the top of my head,
there's a running back. There's two running backs.
Two running backs, a defensive back.
And a defensive back who was involved with one of the running backs.
Of course.
It's a lot of connective tissue.
Is there another one? Can we get a fourth?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I've got another one.
Okay.
Don, we'll use this. Don, get the Ryan Fitzpatrick photograph of him the other day. Ready. It's no explaining it.
No. Why would you even try? Hey, there we go. Dana White says Stipe.
Oh, yes.
Stipe and DC3, August 15th.
Is it going to be on Fight Island? Did you hear he announced Fight Island's going down?
Oh, was that the big announcement?
The big announcement. Dana White, Fight Island, UFC 251. They're holding 4 events on Fight Island. Where is Fight Island, you ask? The United Arab Emirates.
No way.
UAE.
Of course. Is it one of the ones they just made out of garbage and sand?
Do they pay for the fighters' flights over there?
Have to.
Yeah.
That's a long
long
flight.
That's a long flight.
UAE.
Oh, so DC and Stipe is not part of 251.
UFC 251. Volkanovski v. Holloway is the featherweight title fight. That's your headline.
So Jorge Masvidal, we talked to Ariel yesterday.
Yeah, Usman and Masvidal was apparently what Dana White was working on up to the last minute.
Yeah, could not come to terms with Jorge Masvidal, so they gave it to Burns.
Masvidal is just like, he was one of my favorite interviews of Super Bowl week in Miami.
A really good time. Cool guy.
Did he refer to his child as a little effer at one point?
Yes, he did. Yes.
It's one of those moments where you sit at your desk, with your earpieces in and the microphone in front of you and the buses and motorcycles zooming by, echoing off of the roof of your 6th floor makeshift studio in a downtown Miami parking garage. You're like, did he really just refer to his own son as a little effer? That's what Jorge Masvidal did. Joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, pleased to have back here after some remarkable work in the past few weeks for the Washington Post, formerly of Sports Illustrated and more. Robert Klemko back here. How are you, Robert?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we get into what you've been up to the last few weeks, I know you were on top of the Dalvin Cook story coming into the draft, and now here's Dalvin Cook saying in the last 24 hours, or at least a source telling Adam Schefter, that his contract needs to be made more in line of what Christian McCaffrey has, or he's holding out. And part of the reason why he's so underpaid with 1 year left on a contract is because he wasn't drafted where his talents should have had him drafted, Robert. And I want to give you the stage on his story.
Yeah, he's got a fascinating one, but it's not that uncommon across the NFL. He comes from one of the worst neighborhoods in the Miami area, had a number of run-ins with the law, obviously had the big injury early on in his career. And I think he's part of a generation of guys that look at some of these running back holdouts over the past few years and say, I need to get my money now. And I think he's in an especially good spot just because that team and that offense is so reliant on him. But going back to kind of his personal story, there were a lot of questions about how he would handle life in the NFL, how he would handle that first big check. And from everything you hear out of Minnesota and, from teammates there, ex-teammates, he's been a model citizen in the NFL and a guy that, you feel comfortable building a locker room around. So he's a great success story.
He really is. We've had him on, and we had him on pre-draft. We had him on as a rookie, and then we had him on last year when he was a breakout star in this league. His problem is just he can't stay healthy. Kid cannot stay healthy is his essential issue, Robert.
Yeah, and that's why, how can you blame him for wanting to get paid right now? Parents don't raise your kids to be running backs, right?
Yes, and then make sure they get paid before they're 30. Unless their name is Frank Gore, then they'll keep going on and on and on like nobody's business. But you're right. It's a story. So was Dalvin wronged by his draft status, do you think, Robert?
I don't know. I don't think he interviewed very well. I don't think that people felt like he had a great support system around him and he could be a long-term success in the NFL. But, how many guys do you read about every year where X number of teams underestimate a guy's heart, a guy's desire to be great, his ability to, power through some of the adversity. I was talking with a GM yesterday about a lot of the issues that we're talking about now, and in terms of racial inequality. And he was saying, the stories that I go back home and tell my wife about these kids that I meet, they're not about guys that, had a head start in the 400-meter race, came from great neighborhoods, came from great families, and, are at this stage now. They're the stories about the guys that didn't have a head start, that had all these obstacles and all this adversity to overcome. And so much of what we encounter with those kids is due to no fault of their own. It's about some of the symptoms of racial inequality in the United States. And I think Dalvin Cook's story, as you dive deeper into it, falls into that category.
Robert Klemko, the Washington Post, here on the Rich Eisen Show. You just came back. How long were you in the city of Minneapolis, Robert?
I was there for 8 days.
8 days. My word. I guess I could go macro here and say, what'd you see? I mean, I know what you wrote about, but for those who may not know, what did you see, Robert?
I got there Thursday night, and that was the night that they set fire to the 3rd Precinct Police Station. And so that was kind of my first impression. This really wild group of mostly teens, very mixed crowd in terms of racial background. A lot of women out there, surprisingly, as well. Just a really diverse group. Mm-hmm. Just laying waste to this several square block area of the city. And then you wake up the next morning and you start attending some of these protests and some of these rallies and these memorials for Floyd. And I think you begin to realize, and, you know, I'm a newbie at covering this sort of thing, but you begin to realize that everything that you're seeing on CNN, on Fox, a lot of the things that you're seeing on television are the highlight reel from the night before. But, you know, the stuff that's happening during the day, the really positive conversations, the people cleaning up, that's not really what makes for good TV. So, you know, once I was there for a couple of days and got the feel of it, I tried to focus some of my attention on kind of balancing that out and telling the stories of the people who were activists, who were trying to make a difference. One of them actually, you know, kind of intersected with sports for me was Royce White, the former NBA first-round pick who, you know, played all of a few minutes in the NBA, and he's become, you know, a protest activism leader out in Minneapolis.
Tell me more about his story. I read your piece, and I thought it was really interesting, obviously, having you
Thank
on
you.
here. No, it was excellent. How'd you come across him? Let's unpack his story a little bit here for the listeners and viewers here, Robert.
Yeah. Well, you know, the situation is so chaotic there on the ground. You know, there's a million stories, so you just kind of have to go outside and start talking to people. And right by our hotel, we were staying at the Residence Inn, you know, the three Post reporters that were there, was this enormous march. And then, so I started walking in it and talking to people and finding out how it started. And it turns out that Royce White and a group of 30 Minnesota current and former basketball players, football players, college, pro, what have you, they started a group text last summer about getting together and finding a gym to work out. And so that they've kept that group text going. And then when this video came out of George Floyd after he was killed, Royce White said to the group, you know, those of us that have a prominent voice in this community, we need to do something. And Royce has been an advocate for mental health in sports and in education for a long time, ever since he was drafted into the NBA and was unable to fly because he has this generalized anxiety disorder. And there was some hope that he could overcome it, but he never really did. He spent a lot of time bouncing around the developmental leagues and actually played up in Canada, riding by bus. Won the Canadian MVP at 1 year, and then was runner-up the next year, and then semi-retired and got into the Big Three last year, but just hasn't gotten over this fear of flying. And so he's been in Minneapolis working in the community on mental health. And then this is his first time on the front lines of a protest. And he starts this group of 200 people at U.S. Bank Stadium where the Vikings play and starts walking. And they end up with several thousand marching down I-35 West across the Mississippi. And they all take a knee. And then he addresses the crowd and talks about how, you know, they don't want to show us nonviolently protesting like this. So we have to, you know, try to bring as much attention to it as we can. But what he talked about in terms of the visceral reaction to that video and being on the front lines of a protest for the first time was something I heard over and over in Minneapolis. I think a lot of people who were on the fence or on the sidelines before but sympathize with this sort of activism have been brought out of the shadows just by the visceral nature of that killing.
And you could, for somebody who's covered the NFL for as long as you have, would you say the last week in the NFL from obviously the reaction of players to the last 2 weeks then, the murder of George Floyd and the murders of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, just to name obviously three individuals whose demises have shocked so many. Do you think from that to the commissioner's video that came in response to a player's video that was sparked by an NFL employee reaching out to the players to say, hey, we want to do something on the heels of what happened with Drew Brees, that there has been a change with the NFL? Can you say that right now, Robert?
I think there has. And, you know, time will tell how they handle the activism that's going to happen this season and what kind of limits they try to put on player speech. certainly there'll be a change from what they've done in the past in terms of discouraging protesting during the anthem. But I think there has been a change. Roger Goodell represents the owners, and he's not going to make a video like that without a handful of influential owners agreeing that this situation has reached a sort of critical mass. And you can't have that without the violence across the city. You can't across the country. You can't have that without the protests all across the country, and you can't have it without video, right? I mean, I think the thing that's not really talked about in all of this is that all of these sorts of killings have been happening since there have been black people in the United States. But now it's become this reflex to record everything. And so moderates, people who are on the fence, I think they're more swayed by the images of this stuff than they were ever before. And so I think a group of owners had to have realized that this has reached critical mass, and Roger Goodell doesn't do anything without conferencing with those powerful owners, and he came out and made a statement. Now, you can criticize the statement and say, he should have mentioned Colin Kaepernick and talked about, how Kaepernick's protest looks so much more reasonable in hindsight. He didn't do that. And so I think he's always going to kind of toe the line to try to appease the more conservative owners. But what he said, I think, represents the beginning of a new era in the NFL where you're going to have players that are so much more vocal about their activism and the causes that matter to them than they ever were before.
Well, I mean, he said the words Black Lives Matter, Robert, which is, new. And also, he didn't say Kaepernick's name specifically, but him saying we should have listened years ago, that's what else would he be referring to other than Colin Kaepernick, right? So,
right.
And then so the question is about Kaepernick. Here's what Carlos Hyde said on Monday. Former teammate of Colin Kaepernick's, fresh off his first career 1,000-yard season. So Hyde's career on the football field is definitely something that's trending upward. And he had this to say about the situation.
What can the NFL do? I think the NFL can start by signing Cap back. I think if they sign Cap back, that'll show that they really trying to move in a different direction. Because Cat was making a statement 4 years ago about what's going on in today's world, and the NFL didn't bother to listen to him then. So I think they should start by doing that.
Do you think that would be an actual true signal, or do you think Kaepernick wouldn't want to be part of something like that because it might just be a box checked by the NFL? How do you take a statement like that, Robert Klemko?
Yeah, I think you do have to consider the role Kaepernick wants to play at this point because, there is so much pressure on the league. And I'm sure, for years that there have been elements of NFL ownership that have said to, certain owners, certain general managers, if you guys can make this happen, it takes a lot of political pressure off of us. But Kaepernick may not want to go into a situation where he's not actually competing for a starting job, or he's not actually needed, if it feels like it's just being done to satisfy the tides of public opinion that are swaying so rapidly right now. The big mystery with Kaepernick is what he wants, because he doesn't speak in the media that often. He's not the vocal leader that I think a lot of people that are on his side want him to be. He has become a symbol in a lot of ways. I mean, when was the last time you heard Colin address any of these issues of his unemployment in public in an interview? I mean, I think his camp has always been on the stance that, we don't want to put it out in the media and have the media manipulate our words, right? But there are so many avenues now for expression if you're an athlete that is unmitigated by anybody else's voice. And I think, the next several months are his opportunity to, set the record straight and press the NFL on this idea that he continues to be blackballed based on his political stance.
Well, I guess, Robert Klemko, the Washington Post, we got to just linger on this issue for a second here. I guess the last time we heard Kaepernick say something on the subject was after the debacle. There's no other way to describe what happened in the state of Georgia. Was that last November for the tryout that was, slammed together is the only way to put it. And then, with an very odd timing on when it happened, why it happened, never really was any description as to why it happened. And then the mistrust, the distrust that sparked a change of venue at the last second. Debacle from start to finish is the only way to describe that. That's kind of the last time. And by the way, if he wants to, speak publicly and not have his words taken other than what's coming out of his mouth, he could come on a live radio and television show like this one and just have the floor. I'll say that once again. So, right? I mean, that what the hell happened last November? And can that genie be put back into the bottle and uncorked and start again, do you think?
Yeah, I think there were several miscommunications, and there were several of his terms that weren't met when it was first talked about, him having this tryout in Georgia at the Falcons complex. And I think the main one was that he wanted the media there to document it because, if I were Colin, I wouldn't want all of these teams to then come away from that tryout and have these anonymous scouts say, yeah, he really just didn't have the zip on his fastball anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think that's the easy way out for a lot of these teams. But, from the team perspective, there's really no precedent for letting media come watch a mass free agent tryout, right? But I think the mistake for players is to focus on whether or not Colin comes back as some sort of marker for a measure of, the NFL's acceptance. I mean, there's so many other things that the NFL can do that can advance the fight against racial inequality. I mean, first and foremost, finally figure out a way to have African-American coaches in leadership positions and head coaching positions and African-American general managers, because there are so many people that are in that pipeline who aren't getting the same opportunities as, this good old boy network where you're seeing coaches' sons and relatives of coaches and son-in-laws of coaches hired to prominent coaching positions all over the league, and a lot of African-American coaches who have, put in more time and had more success being skipped over. So, I think that's the first thing the NFL can do. And the other place where, nobody in the NFL in the leadership has stepped up is in this discussion of compensating student athletes in the NCAA. Because right now the NFL is a beneficiary of a system that some argue robs a lot of African-American teenagers coming out of poverty of their earning power in the athletic prime of their careers. And you haven't heard anybody in the NFL in a leadership position talk about the equity of that or the fairness of that. And it's because the NFL benefits from that pipeline.
Last one for you, Robert. You, again, have been right at the middle of this story, covering it for the many, for Sports Illustrated, Washington Post, so on and so forth, USA Today, right? You've been at you've talked to NFL management, you've spoken to players. You even said that there's going to be a burst of activism that's coming this fall. We know it. We all know it. The NBA will probably, knock on wood, go first because they will open up and tip off in July. I mean, it's entirely possible baseball does, but that we'll see a burst of activism for the NFL this fall. How would you counsel if they said, "Hey, Robert Klemko, you've spoken to everybody here. I put in your plate." How would you counsel everybody to figure out what to do, Robert?
Yeah. It's a good question, and it's a story I'm actually working on right now. I mentioned I spoke to a general manager yesterday, and he talked about what he's done over the last 3 weeks. And, he took the phrase Black Lives Matter very literally, and he called all of the black men and women that have mattered to him in his career and in his life, and called to check in and see how they were doing, but then also wanted to know what he could be doing differently. And some of those people were in his organization, some were not. And I think one of the takeaways that he came away with is that we need to sit down with players who may not be in leadership positions, who may not be one of our captains, but these guys that have these real-life, tangible experiences with, police brutality, with, racial profiling, and talk to them about a plan. Because if it doesn't feel like everybody in our organization is included in this discussion, then we're never going to achieve any degree of solidarity on this thing. And I think when Ferguson and Baltimore were happening, a lot of the discussions that happened with teams were around, were between coaches and management and player leadership, and didn't involve every voice in the room. And I think if I were giving broad advice, I would tell these coaches, these general managers, these owners to try to make sure that everybody in the room feels heard.
Yeah, but don't you think that there needs to be a league-wide policy here? That that Team A says some stand, some kneel. I mean, we're gonna run through the same questions that we did in 2016 and 2017. Now, Robert, I mean, it's coming. We know it. It's here already. Drew Brees had to address the president himself on Twitter to say, "Don't make this a wedge issue." So we know it's coming. The question is, though, you can't have Team A say some stand, some kneel, and Team B is like those who don't want to stand, stay in the locker room, and Team C is like everybody's standing. Everybody's out of the locker room and everybody's standing. Like we can't have a repeat. So the question is, can there be on ownership side some new committee that's formed as a listening committee? I don't know what you call it. Player relation committee. And then have a players group of players sit down with these owners and come up with it. And then this is what we're going to do as a league. And Roger comes out and says in a video, this is what we're doing. And everybody goes and plays football, amongst a pandemic on top of all of it. But you know what I'm saying? Like, don't you think that's what has to happen?
I don't think that the NFL will want to go out there and say, we're going to put together a committee and create a rule and say that players have to stay in the locker room or players can protest. I think that they will say, we're going to have the national anthem before games. We're going to have the players and coaches out there. If you want to protest, you can. And I think that the networks will in turn say, this is still a hot button issue for us, and we're just not going to show the national anthem anymore. And that will be the establishment attempt to, quiet some of the criticism of what goes on during the national anthem while still trying to appease the players that are protesting. I think that's the middle ground that they will ultimately reach.
All right, last one for you. I lied. I'm assuming since you said you spent 8 days in Minneapolis, you were at the George Floyd Memorial. There's several Vikings there. I don't know if Timberwolves arrived or if anybody else professionally athletes were there. What was it like? I assume you were there.
Yeah. I didn't meet or interview any athletes there in my time, but I did read that several had stopped by. I think that there was sort of a happier vibe. Not so much the activism, the protesting that you'd see in the marches across the city and the protests outside of the police precinct or, different media companies. It was more of, this is a healing space, and anybody that wants to come and celebrate George's life, please do that. And the one thing I noticed that really stood out to me, and I wrote a little bit about it in the story that came out today, is all of these families that came out to the memorial. People with kids, 5, 6, up through teenagers. And it occurred to me that, my education on dealing with the police, on racial inequity, on police brutality happened in learning about Rodney King when I was a teenager, and dealing with police, later on in life, and reading about a lot of these things later on in life. Whereas if you're 10 years old right now and you have Twitter, there's a good chance you've seen the video of Floyd getting choked to death. So this generation is dealing with all of these issues faster than my generation did. And all of these parents, I think, that brought their kids to the memorial are grappling with these really difficult conversations about racial inequity, and it's happening sooner. And that was something that kind of gave me hope, really, because if these kids are talking about it and learning about it sooner, then, it stands to reason that their understanding of it is going to be greater than ours was at a younger age.
Robert, thanks for the time. Again, great work from you in the Washington Post, and let's stay in touch. I'd love to keep having this conversation with you here on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it. Robert Klemko, at Robert Klemko, Klemko on Twitter. Follow his work. It really is remarkable. 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. If you want to call on our Geico fan line, go ahead and do that. Geico would like to say thank you to you. And by thanking you for sharing with as much as you have and your platforms to share, Geico would like to share with you the Geico Give Back, a 15% credit on car and motorcycle policies for current and new customers. And because Geico's committed for the long haul, the 15% credit lasts your full policy term. Visit geico.com/giveback. That's geico.com/giveback for info and eligibility. Lots to talk about with Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints when he joins us in about a half an hour. I enjoyed his work with the New York Football Jets, I'll tell you that. Next to David Harris, one of the best linebackers Michigan has ever sent to the next level.
That guy was a beast.
David Harris, right?
Yeah.
Harris and Davis were really good, man. Really, really good. And Demario is very active, and he's got a new book, and obviously lots going on in the Saints world and in his world as well. The question is, the kneeling is going to take up so much, and the anthem and the kneeling is going to take up all the oxygen. The question is, again, do I ask? I mean, got to ask, are you going to, because that's going to be the conversation.
Yep.
At least the piece that sparks it. And the fact is that kneeling shouldn't overshadow the conversation that it's intended to spark.
Right.
Correct?
Correct. That's part of the problem. Everyone's focusing on the act of kneeling.
It's not
and
about
what it represents.
exactly like, are you going to kneel? Are you going to kneel? Are you going to kneel? And not like, all right, let's talk about what you would be kneeling and how we can actually affect the change that you're seeking.
Yes. Yeah.
Correct? Like so.
Oh, 100%.
I don't want to be just one of those, as what our friend from the state of Washington, if he's out there again, referred to me, talking head. Talking head.
I mean, I would assume a vast number of players are going to kneel this season. Totally fine, but I hope...
The NBA is going first, pal.
But the NBA has a rule in place, remember.
Isn't that remarkable how the NFL was always cast as the less enlightened league, and the NBA, based on what happened with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf back in the day, said everybody's standing, nobody's sitting. And he lost his gig in the NBA over it.
Pretty much. I got to imagine the NBA is going to do something. Though.
Don't question the players are going to do something. Questions, the players, when they show up, right now, we're sitting here, June 9th, right?
June 9th.
June 9th, 2020. We're sitting here right now, June 9th, 2020. NASCAR drivers are wearing shirts saying, I can't breathe. All right? That happened over the weekend. And English Premier league goes next week, starts next week. You're already seeing Bundesliga athletes wearing, writing "I can't breathe" on their shirts, jerseys. I don't know what the German phrase is for it. Kits. Thank you, Don Bovey, on their kits. That's going to happen in the English Premier League, right?
Gotta think
That'll
so.
happen. I don't know. Will a professional golfer
We'll find out Thursday.
have something on their gear on Thursday? That would be new. But nothing's going to compare when the NBA shows up for their training camp. So there's that. That's the first league known for its activism that's going first. The NFL is 3 months away, man. It's amazing. Again,
Oof.
3 minutes feels like a year.
Oh, my gosh.
These days. But we are all opening up in a way like where I can actually tell a date now.
A little bit. I just remember someone I saw on Twitter the other day, someone was talking about Rob Manfred levying the punishment for the Astros was mid-January? That feels like 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, we have Karl Ravech on. Should I ask him about, hey,
my goodness.
So if there's no league this year, or they play 50 games.
Yeah, can AJ Hinch manage?
That's what I'm saying.
Season?
Can AJ Hinch, manage next year? And will he get the shot? Because, hey,
Alex Cora,
the fact
can we
that we've
bring
got
it back?
baseball at all is amazing. Let's not even care anymore about banging a garbage can. If there are no fans, we will hear it.
How brazen do you have to be to try this garbage can banging with no fans?
Or whistling.
Yeah.
Should I use that time with Carl?
I hope they
later
go
on?
for it. That'd be awesome.
Hey, do we have one thing we didn't even talk about with Klemko? He had an interesting tweet based on an ESPN redrafting of the league. Did you see that?
I saw that.
And where they had their analysts
I like
together.
Klemko's list much better
Because he said
the
they're all
ESPN one.
quarterbacks, which is true.
Yeah.
Like if you redrafted the NFL, they would be all quarterbacks right now. And somebody had them drafting 15th overall Drew Lock. Like, okay.
Right.
But
By the way, Denver,
Roddy Stanley was a top 10 pick.
Drew Lock at 15.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, come on. Be honest.
He looked great towards the end of the year, but
Be
top
honest with
15 player in
yourself.
the National Football League. In the National Football League.
get
In the
outta here.
same league we're talking about right now.
I think in Klemko's, Aaron Donald was like 25 or something.
But they were all quarterbacks.
And the E
before.
ESPN list had Aaron Donald like 4. Let me try to find this. Hold on.
I remember when Aaron Donald got drafted, Mayock was damn near jumping out of his chair saying this is a steal. What was he like? Was he 11th overall or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. It was much
Mayock,
lower than he should have been.
Mayock was flipping out.
Yeah.
Rams got
Yeah.
a steal.
Klemko's list, the first 19 players are quarterbacks, and then Joey Bosa, the first edge player, taken at 20.
No, I think Donald is 13 on his list. But at any rate,
Aaron Donald, 28 on Klemko's.
2014, he was 13th overall in 2014. 13th overall.
You want to guess how many running backs Klemko has on his redraft?
In the first round?
Yeah.
0.
1. The last pick, 32, Christian McCaffrey.
It is amazing how McCaffrey has done what he has done. And he hasn't missed a game. Well, we hit that in a minute.
Yeah, ESPN's list is crazy.
Do you have a poll question for me to ask you in the next hour? Because I don't want to go on
I
NBCSN.
went running backs. I do
Great.
have a this day in history one that we're trying to come up
We
with
can
some
hit that a
options
little bit.
for.
We can hit that a little bit.
Running backs, I went which 2017 draft class running back deserves to get paid next? Dalvin, Kamara, James Conner, Aaron Jones.
Hey, before we end this hour, you know who woke up? Do you know who just woke up? Not woke up.
Like,
Hey, you didn't know you were there.
oh,
Didn't know you were there when everyone else is talking about this subject.
Who's that?
The Knicks. Knicks woke up.
Oh my god.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
Hey.
So terrible.
Yeah.
5 lines.
There
Are you
is some
kidding
sort
me?
of strife going on in society. I didn't know that, says the New York Knicks.
Goodness. Come on now.
Did they tweeted this out. Is this even 280 characters? Could that even fit in a tweet?
Add that up for you. Hold on.
Would you cut and paste to see if they could have fit it in a whole tweet?
Let me add this up for you.
Because if your statement on racism and bigotry can fit into a tweet, the extent of your words on the subject. Can you get that done for me in the next few minutes? Because we're going to hit this.
Yeah, I can get this in the next few minutes. Stand by.
I mean, so glad the Knicks are still there. I was wondering if they were there, right in the middle of the city where everyone's going on the streets, talking about George Floyd. Hey, way to go, go New York, go!
Welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah, welcome to the party. Great summer movie. As Big Cat referred to it the other day.
Summer movie.
He responded to a movie site saying, "What's your favorite summer movie?" He wrote back, "Die Hard." I'm like, exactly. Great summer movie.
Like Miracle on 34th Street.
Demario Davis, Dr. Alan Sills, Karl Ravech, and you, 844-204-RICH. Call us. We'll take your calls as well. Final 2 hours of the show on NBCSN. Join us if you wish. Now, you told him about how you are the Bill Walsh of audio executives.
Exactly,
You can't screw these up. Your favorite catchphrase from the original Predator. Go ahead. Here's one.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
All right, that's number one. Here's number two.
Okay.
Get to the chopper!
Can't hear them at all.
Okay. You can't hear them?
Cannot hear them. Yes. I'm just kidding.
You can't hear them.
So what I'm going to do, I'm doing this blindfolded.
Mike,
Wait a minute. The sound. Wait a minute. Did Bill Walsh not have the volume up? Did the Bill Walsh of sound engineers not have the volume up for the segment?
Please.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
We can
boy.
kill it.
This does not bode well.
Can you go? There's a method to his madness. Do you want to try one more time now?
Yes.
Okay,
Here we
go ahead.
Okay, man. Here we go.
Bleeds, we can kill it.
Okay, if it bleeds,
we can kill it.
Okay, here's the next one.
Get to the chopper!
Get to the chopper.
And here's the other one.
One ugly mother.
Okay, there's that one.
Okay.
Start, bench, cut.
All right, get to the chopper, gets cut. Because it's only an incidental line, and the only reason we remember it is because he's Austrian. If anybody else said, "Get to the choppers," it wouldn't have been a line. It's only because he's the choppers, because he's Austrian. Cut. It's superfluous. We're gonna bench your one ugly MFer. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Because it's a succinct line, and it's done in a very naturalistic way.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Very well done.
That's just
Now, for everybody else who comes in here on the Rich Eisen show, we're going to show them.
setting the bar here.
We're going to show them this start, bench, cut because you have raised the bar, Keegan.
Setting the
Michael
bar
King.
right here.
We're gonna edit out Del Tufo
was just gonna
messing up
say-
the audio. We're gonna edit that out.
Can you edit that part
edit
out?
that out.
No, it's
too good.
Perfect.
This is the Rich Eisen Show.
Who the is that guy?
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
So, Ariel Helwani, is Conor McGregor the new Brett Favre of sports?
Download and podcast at richeisenshow.com.
Do I think he will fight again? Yes. I just think he's very frustrated right now.
Earlier on the show, Washington Post columnist Robert Klemko. Coming up, New Orleans Saints linebacker Demario Davis. NFL Chief Medical Officer Dr. Alan Sills. Plus, ESPN MLB host Karl Ravech. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Well, hey, everybody. We appreciate you joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, live on NBCSN. We say hello to our friends at NBCSN 1 to 3 Eastern every single day after lunch talk with my buddy Mike Tirico. We're on Sirius XM Channel 211 every day at noon Eastern time after my buddy Dan Patrick's show. We're also on youtube.com/Rich Eisen Show every single day. So basically, you can't avoid us is basically what I'm trying to say. And if you don't care to avoid us, you can call us. That's I mean the most passive aggressive way to say we'd like to talk. 844-204-RICH.
Let's do it.
844-204-RICH.
Come on, people.
We got phone lines for you. We'll take your calls because we've got some time. Mike Del Tufo and Chris Brockman. Good to see you.
Rich.
Mike, I gave you top billing today. I never do that.
No, I mean,
that's okay. It's just in case you're sitting there wondering.
I'm Olaf. I'm not the main guy.
That was a fun chat with Josh Gad yesterday. I heard from a lot of people, a lot of friends, and a lot of fans of this show saying they enjoyed that. He's just a delightful cup of Joe.
He really is.
Cup of Josh, that Josh Gad.
I mean, he's a Dolphins fan, but that's okay.
It's okay, boy. He gave your Pats a business and the business, but in Olaf's voice. So it was nice, warm. It was like a nice warmish hug. A nice warmish hug.
Okay. Pat's hug.
Hello, everybody. Appreciate you joining us, as I mentioned. So, what's on our minds today? Obviously, the National Football League is on our minds today because why not? We all love the NFL, and there is some actual. Contractual news going on right now is Dalvin Cook, one of the best in the business. I love this kid. We had him on before the draft. We had him on after the draft years ago when he was a rookie and he couldn't stay healthy, and he showed that he had some ability to be transformational. And then last year, my gosh, what a great year last year prior to suffering a shoulder injury that kept him from being as effective as the Vikings needed him to be. Our buddy Adam Schefter from ESPN, quoting a source, quote, he's out without a reasonable extension. He will not be showing up for camp or beyond. He's got 1 year at $1.3 million left. It is a salary that is not befitting his role on this team. The Vikings have given every possible, I think, every Wilf dollar available in guaranteed form has been handed to their quarterback, correct? Kirk Cousins has all the guaranteed money in all the entire NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Can you look that up, Chris, for me?
I'm on it.
I think any possible guaranteed dollar has been hoovered up by the vacuum cleaner known as Kirk Cousins' bank account.
I think he's a billionaire now.
So, but it doesn't go without Cook. We know that, okay? It doesn't go where the Vikings want to go without Cook. We know that. So, Dalvin Cook, according to all the other reports, though, he wants Christian McCaffrey money.
Me too.
Well, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just in.
Dang.
But I'm glad you're not holding out because I love you being here, Chris. I need you here. You're important to the Rich Eisen Show.
Of course.
Christian McCaffrey has missed 0 games as a professional, by the way, which is remarkable, especially since when he was coming out of college in Stanford.
Oh, my goodness.
All right.
How silly do those conversations
and
look
coming
now?
out, and we're watching him at the Combine. Remember, we were talking on NFL Network, I think, so this was pre-Mayock leaving for the Raiders. Mayock was sitting there saying that his workout at running back, going through the receiver drills, he was as good as the receivers that we were seeing at the Combine. It was a remarkable Combine performance. The but for Christian McCaffrey, that Marshall Faulk came on this show and Reggie Bush came on this show, both separately saying was insanity to even say, but they're running backs of note. One with a Heisman that we all know wherever that might be, and Marshall's Heisman was fraudulently taken by Gino Torretta. I'll say that for Marshall.
Marshall's Heisman is in Gino
Toretta's. The word
Toretta's.
in Marshall Faulk's life is Gino. Marshall Faulk lost the Heisman Trophy to Gino Torretta. And he's still scoring touchdowns, Marshall, in San Diego. But he, like Christian McCaffrey, performed in the middle of the night for the East Coast viewers. And anyway, conversation was Christian McCaffrey couldn't run between the tackles. He wouldn't hold up. And when he got the contract, look at those numbers. Only player with 2,500 rushing and receiving yards in his first 3 seasons ever. 0.0 games missed. That's Dalvin Cook's issue. That will be my only thing to tell him, that I would tell him. Counsel him. My 2 unsolicited sense is Melvin Gordon's on line 1. Now, Melvin Gordon had some terrific seasons for the San Diego / Los Angeles Chargers, and it all went for bupkis when he wanted to hold out for Ezekiel Elliott money, and at the time, Todd Gurley money. And the Chargers said, we'll give you less than that, but here's what, 8 figures? And he said no, and I don't want that to happen to Dalvin Cook. 2 different running backs. Cook is in a better position. He's younger. He is also on a team that needs him particularly desperately. But I would just say, highest paid back in the league, when you have not answered the bell all 16 games, all 3 of your years, missed 17 games, McCaffrey's missed 0. That is a problem. So I don't know what the Vikings will do, because they need him, and he deserves to be paid $1.3 million when you are the lead back for your team. And also, you've got a new guy in Kubiak. We all know what Kubiak can do and what Cook could do in this offense. Oh, my word. Stephon Diggs is gone, so what are your offense could miss him? Who knows? Justin Jefferson might come in and be the Stephon Diggs. I don't know what the Vikings will do. Maybe they'll put a number on the table that's in between McCaffrey and what the Chargers offered Melvin Gordon, that Gordon left on the table and still isn't making back. That's the only thing I would counsel Dalvin Cook. If it's true, you're looking for more to be the highest paid back in the league, boy, oh boy, I think you're going to wind up wanting figuratively more than what the Vikings might put upon our friend Dalvin Cook. That's all I'm saying. Just watch out. Now, Chris, I've never asked you this question in the damn near 6-year history of the show, and it may sound really weird to you.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
May sound really weird to you.
I'm open.
Would you like some salad? You hungry for some salad?
I
don't know if you're a salad guy.
I am a salad guy. I like a good salad.
Well, hold on a second. I'm talking about the word variety.
Oh, I know.
Because I'll tell you what, man.
Nope, I'm not going to do it.
I'll tell you what, man. The New York Knicks woke up today. They woke up and have finally addressed what's going on in the streets of our society, in our world, turning it upside down. George Floyd is being laid to rest today in the city of Houston. Knicks is the last team in the NBA to even send out anything to do with the murder of George Floyd. Here's what they put out there, everybody. Right before noon, here's the word salad. They should just actually have a bowl and put words in it and have a little bit of vinaigrette on the side. Every one of us has a role to play in creating a more just and equal society where there is no racism, bigotry, violence, or hate. We stand with all who act for positive change. Way to take a stand out there, James Dolan. Well done. Finally. Hey, it's almost lunchtime here. 2 weeks after the entire country and world is just totally spinning off its axis after seeing the murder of somebody on the streets of Minneapolis, on top of everything else. I think we should put something out. Could you take that, Chris, statement and actually fit it into a single tweet? Are there even 280 characters in the statement for the New York Knicks? If I take the under on that, have you
I have
done the character count?
I have typed it out, and then I had to do some math. By the way, if you would have taken under 200 characters, you'd be the big winner at the
You could
casino,
have almost
Mikey.
fit in an old Twitter. They would have had to thread it on old Twitter.
Barely. I did the math. 177 characters.
That is embarrassing.
In that statement by the New York Knicks. 177.
The Knicks finally put out a statement, and you could fit it into a tweet and even link something.
Oh, you could throw a link in there for sure.
Oh, my God.
Bunch of hashtags if you wanted.
What a total, absolute, complete embarrassment. And I know that's the word. That's the word of sports talk radio. Or actually, no. It's worse than that. It's a disgrace. It really is.
Shame on you.
That's the word. But this is truly an absolute, complete, total disgrace.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From an organization in New York City that represents the city. It's in the middle of the city. The Mets are in Queens. The Yanks are in the Bronx. The Nets are in Brooklyn. The minor league Yankees are in Staten Island.
That's right.
And this is Manhattan. You're looking at Manhattan here. That's the island that most of New York City lives on. And yes, Staten Island is part of New York City. Mr.
Yep.
New England by way of Alaska.
Virginia, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Military Rat over there that's been all over the place that tells me whether my hometown is part of New York City. It's one of the 5 boroughs, bud.
You're right.
The other side of the bridge.
The Knicks represent the island of Manhattan in the sports world. They are a city jewel, or used to be. What a total embarrassment on top of a disgrace, a mockery of a sham, to use an old phrase from the movies. Awful.
What do you always say? It stinks on ice?
It's a thoroughly unacceptable response. A box checked. Not even. I mean, is there any heart in that attempt? Did they rip it off from like a music lyric somewhere? You know, Imagine. It's like John Lennon. Let's take something that sounds like Imagine, put it in the middle of something about we all take responsibility. How about saying, yeah, we respect police here in the city of New York. We understand that we have many police officers and members of law enforcement who come to our games, but we can't stand for the murder of somebody in the streets of the United States. Could try that one on for size if you want to make sure that you leave no one offended. You could fit this in a tweet. You fit this in a tweet. Let me repeat this. You could fit it in a tweet. Oh my gosh. Is there like an 8-second TikTok version of this that they could put out?
Oh. Well,
you know what? I don't even go anymore on the subject. It's disgraceful. But hey, at least they woke up. Serve up a little word salad right there and top of Penn Station. New York City. Demario Davis is first up. Jets and Giants play in New Jersey. He's a former Jet. And Demario Davis is now a New Orleans Saint. And Demario Davis has a lot on his mind, and we are thrilled to have him unpack it here on the show. We paged Dr. Alan Sills to the program. Dr. Alan Sills is the chief medical officer of the National Football League. And then Karl Ravech joins us. Karl will talk about what's going on with baseball. He broke the news of the latest proposal from management of baseball to its players that fell flat. And Dr. Alan Sills had a lot to do with what I'm holding in my hands. This is the most, I guess, the meat, if you will, of the These are the 9 pages of protocols that were sent out by the league office in a memo yesterday to all 32 member clubs of the NFL, talking about what protocols need to be put in place to welcome players back into facilities, expecting it in time for training camp. So there's lots to talk about with Dr. Sills about where they came up with this and what does it mean for a playing season. They're going. NFL's going. And there's nothing in here about testing, and there's nothing in here about what happens if a player tests COVID, with the exception of teams needing to have PPE on hand, similar to what many doctors and nurses and members of our frontline workers fighting COVID-19 were asking for at the outset of this pandemic disaster. Other than that, we're talking about what the players need to do to get in there and who's allowed in there and who's allowed where and who's allowed and what they want to have as many one-way hallways. They want to have as few amount of people that don't need to be there.
I'm so curious about how they're going to set up the locker room, especially during training camp when there are 90-plus guys in there.
They're going to have to find other spaces. They're going to have to bring in triple wides, I think. You have to figure that out. And the equipment managers, we salute you in advance, because every single piece of equipment, once it's used, needs to be, to say cleaned. They have come up with exactly what they want to use to clean it with, and everything is going to be cleaned as soon as it's used, and then they're going to have to use it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and so on and so forth. This is just training camp. So Dr. Sills will join us here on this program. What's our poll question over there, Chris, as we take our first break in advance of Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints joining us?
Yeah, I'm looking at running backs, the Dalvin Cook situation. 2017 draft class for running back was absolutely stacked.
Loaded.
Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, the first 2 taken. Fournette didn't get his 5th-year option picked up. McCaffrey obviously got that record-breaking deal. Which guy deserves to be paid next? Who would you pay next out of this group? Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Aaron Jones.
Okay. At Rich Eisen Show to vote on it for our Twitter page. And Todd Gurley passed his physical. I want to discuss that a little bit later on in this hour, because it's still one of the greatest mysteries that the NFL has had in the last 10, 15 years. And we're going to run through some of the greatest mysteries that I don't think will ever be answered in the NFL.
I love this.
Malcolm Butler.
Gurley passing his physical is one of them. And it's going to spark a fun conversation later on in this hour before Dr. Sills and Karl Ravech joins us here. But when we come back, Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints, we can't wait to chat with him. And you, 844-204-RICH, number to dial here on this busy edition of The Rich Eisen Show. Just including the names George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. Just include those names. How many characters are those names? You could stand by, right? And then you could still fit them into the tweet. Our condolences to the families of, and then name those. Could you still fit that into the tweet? If it's only 177 characters, we send our condolences to the families of, and then spell those names, might push it past 280 characters. You know what I'm saying? No. I'm just saying that these are names that everybody is saying in a statement, at least what they're saying about the society in this world, that they're at least saying the names of the people who are at the forefront of everybody's minds. You know, you put them all together. Do you got 280 characters? It's absurd that the Knicks decided to do that, and nobody tells this guy, don't. Nobody can tell him don't. Nobody can tell him don't do it this way. Is there nobody there that can save this man from himself? Because there's nobody who can save this man, the Knicks, from this man. Nobody. Nobody's out there. And I love all the Knicks fans who are like, I'll still go. I love him so much. Come on. And then on top of all of it, people are like, can't the commissioner do anything? Like it's Adam Silver's job to protect the Knicks from the worst owner in sports? My Lord. Read the poll question again there, Christopher, because I think I know who I would choose out of all of them.
I was counting up the characters.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. So the poll question today, 2017 draft class running backs.
Yes.
Who would you pay next now that Christian McCaffrey has gotten his and Leonard Fournette looks like he's going to be a free agent after next year? Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Aaron Jones. Obviously left out Kareem Hunt, Joe Mixon, and those guys.
I know.
These are the four best.
It's Dalvin Cook's turn, and then it's Kamara's turn, right? They're the same year, correct? This is it.
Yeah, this is all 2017.
It's
so
Kamara.
Yeah.
I mean, Alvin Kamara is when healthy.
When he gets the ball.
Yeah. I know.
When he gets the
Tell
ball.
me about it. I had him as my fantasy first-round choice 2 out of the last 3 years. Just couldn't do it last year.
3 years.
I made the dumbest mistake, the worst mistake in fantasy football. I said, because Fabs, I'm blaming Fabs. Fabs said take Zeke over Christian McCaffrey. Fact.
We had the fantasy footballers here.
Fact.
Told you to take McCaffrey though.
I'm an idiot. Don't use that as a drop. Where's it? (844-204-RICH) number to dial. Demario Davis will be calling in shortly here from the New Orleans Saints. We just had our poll question unpacked before we went to break. Chris, hit it one more time here so people can get on board. (844-204-RICH) and also go to at Rich Eisen Show on our Twitter feed to vote on it.
Yeah, looking at the 2017 running back draft class, who would you pay next now that Dalvin Cook said he wants a new deal? Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Aaron Jones. No surprise, I think Alvin Kamara is kind of leading here, 60%. Dalvin Cook, 25%, 11% for Aaron Jones. No love for James Conner. Really cool video you hit about
him giving his dad a car, a truck, right? A truck.
That was awesome. Yeah, 4% for James Conner.
I saw that video. I retweeted that because could you imagine your son makes it to the University of Pittsburgh and then gets sick. And then survives it, and then gets to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then performs as well as he did.
With all that was surrounding the team with Le'Veon Bell and all that.
I know. And then all of that. I know a truck is just a material item that is heck of a material item. But just the fact that your son got to the point where he could get you this material item.
That obviously meant so much to him.
Oh,
just
my
watching
gosh.
That video.
That's why there's always
really
the story,
cool.
man. The story is
really
always
cool.
what gets me. Let's take some phone calls here on the Rich Eisen Show. Eric in Florida, you're here on the show. What's up, Eric?
So, Rich, regarding, Dalvin Cook, I'm a big Florida State fan. Every D coordinator, NFC Central's laughing their head off. Please, Dalvin, hold out. Please. Because Kirk Cousins sucks. And by the time they get to game
Hold on a second.
Wait, Rich. And by the time they get to game 6,
yes,
Rick Spielman's going to have to live in some kind of a hole underneath the ground because everybody's going to go and, do you believe they paid Kirk Cousins $30 million and they won't even negotiate with Dalvin Cook? Dalvin Cook is freaking awesome, and he makes Kirk Cousins who he is.
You know what? I appreciate the passion, but Eric, would you, if you are in charge and you have to slice up your salary cap in a manner that you've already sliced it up, giving it to the quarterback that I assume you as the general manager do not have the same concept or evaluate in the same manner as Eric from Florida does, would you pay that much money, Christian McCaffrey money? tens of millions of dollars to somebody who has not finished the season at this position, where more often than not you are punished by a defender? Wouldn't you have a moment of concern for that?
My answer is that I would sign Colin Kaepernick as my number 2, and when Kirk Cousins sucks, I bring him in and watch this team fly with Kaepernick and Dalvin Cook.
Okay. Last question for you, Eric, and I appreciate the call. How do you feel about Kirk Cousins? What do you think of Kirk?
Oh, Kirk, he's a very nice guy, and he went to a university that I know you can't stand. So let's all just chime in and tell the truth. The man's he's done better than that quarterback from Oklahoma who I can't remember. He's milked the system so great.
You're talking about Sam Bradford.
Yes, so you have to admire Kirk Cousins.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you for the call. Appreciate that. At least he gives Kirk Cousins that.
You like that?
Hold on, let's look up their
I don't think Eric likes that.
No.
No, I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's paid like a baseball player, man.
I mean,
so Kirk Cousins is at...
He's paid he's the Darrelle Revis of quarterbacks. Darrelle Revis gamed the system to make a ton of money.
So Kirk Cousins has played 8 years so far. He's at $100 million in career earnings. He has $96 million due to him in the next 3 years. Oof. Stand by for Sam Bradford.
Well, Sam Bradford, I mean, Matthew Stafford was the last quarterback to be paid under the old system. He was the last quarterback to be drafted under the old system and thus becoming the highest paid player. And that was what was so crazy about the old system.
It was nuts.
Is that the highest paid player on your team was whoever just got drafted first overall. Yeah. So if you're drafting first overall, you stink, to use the one step down vernacular than what Eric just used. And you stink, and you now are in the position of having to draft a first overall player, and that person automatically becomes the highest paid player in the history of your franchise. The only thing I could say is, like, let's just say you're a law firm, you're an accounting firm, and you hire the number one person at Harvard Law, or you hire, name whatever, at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. You hire somebody who is number one in their class, and that person is the highest paid individual in the history of your firm, which has been around for 70, 80 years.
Like Mitch McDeere from the firm.
Mitch McDeere from the firm was the highest paid. Like, he made more than Gene Hackman. He made more than Wilford Brimley. Right?
So Sam Bradford has 34 career wins and made $130 million.
Right. Let's go back to the phone lines here on the Rich Eisen Show. Leon in Baltimore, Maryland, you're here on the show. 844-204-RICH number to dial. Leon just called it. Go for it.
Hey, Rich. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the fellas as well. How y'all doing today?
Good afternoon. How you doing, Leon?
Hey, just want to let you know I'm also a struggling Knicks fan.
Oh, gosh.
I was born in Brooklyn, lived 13 years in the city of New York, but nonetheless, do you believe in sports curses, Rich?
Yeah.
Because I believe that this is what I refer to as the Knicks, the curse of Patrick Ewing, ever since they got rid of him for the whatever we got out of Vin Baker and Glenn Rice. It struck us hard ever since then. It hasn't been right ever since. And as a Jets fan as well, ever since Broadway Joe put that one finger in the air,
Leon, here's the thing, man. I feel you. I feel your pain, as you know, and thank you for the call. There's no such thing as a curse. And if there is a curse, it's that Charles Dolan handed his son, who hit a triple, and or thought he hit a triple, and he was born. I think he was born on third base. I think if you look at James Dolan's birth certificate,
it says third base.
It says third base. Born location third base. that guy got daddy gave him enough money to buy the Knicks. That's where it all went south. Joining me here now from the New Orleans Saints, pleased to have on the Rich Eisen Show, Demario Davis. How are you, Demario?
I'm blessed, man. I can't complain.
Appreciate you joining us right here on the show. What's going on in your mind, Demario? I'll just give you the floor on that. What's going on between your temples you'd like people to know about right now? Right.
Well, it's real, strange times. I think everybody's emotions are all over the place. Everybody's trying to make sense of things. And, two things that I try to rely on is my faith first. And that always brings me back to balance, and then just my love for humanity second. My neighbors, love my neighbor. That always kind of brings me back like into a central, mindset. I think there's a global outcry right now on behalf of the black community. There's been hundreds of years of oppression, and finally, just I guess the line has been drawn, and everybody's just kind of tired of it and saying, you know what, we have to do something on behalf of these people, this people group. And, it's long overdue. It's a shame that we have to deal with this in our lifetime, but, it's going on now, and it's real. And, I just think we should just deal with it, and move past it. And the next issue that we have in this country shouldn't involve, race, especially around black people.
Well, I know you've spoken publicly since the team meeting last week about what happened in that team meeting a couple days after Drew Brees said what he said, which feels like a year ago now, certainly since what Drew has done and said and tweeted and Instagrammed since then. But what was that meeting like? What can you share with the listeners and viewers of this show, what that video conference meeting was like?
Well, I'll never share, what goes on in a team meeting. I don't think anybody should, talk about something that's private. But, when it pertains to Drew, as it pertains to kneeling, as it pertains to Kaepernick, like we're making our mistake, the same mistake that we made in 2017 when we took the conversation to something that shouldn't have never been about. I think the global outcry that's, happening around the world right now is around, black people, and more specifically around police brutality and making sure that we change the way that we do policing, black communities especially. And, we need to be spending more time talking about that and how do we find, solutions to that. All these people speaking out, and, these are the conversations that we should be having versus talking about, should players be kneeling, should, what somebody stands on this, what somebody stands on that. Like, let's just talk about, the issue at hand and find solutions. And let's not let the conversation be dominated by anything except that.
Well, and I say to that, amen. Because I was talking with the journalist Robert Klemko of the Washington Post in the last hour, Demario, about, this is going to be the conversation, in the fall. Is our players kneeling, and what's the league going to do about it? If they should do anything about it, is the league fine with it? That's going to be the conversation. And how does that not drown out the conversation that's necessary to be had, because the kneeling has nothing to do with the anthem or the flag. It has to do with what exactly you said. So how do you, I guess, solve that issue when clearly we are expecting some sort of protests to take place with players when football is played this fall, Demario?
Yeah, we have a lot of time till the fall. Let's just talk about the protests that are going on right now. There's a much more extreme protest happening in the streets right now, where you have millions of people who are protesting and marching in the streets, not just in America. Millions of people of all ethnic groups, millions and millions of people all around the world in different countries taking the streets and marching specifically on behalf of black people, and bringing justice to the cops that are responsible for the death of George Floyd, the cops that are responsible for the death of Ahmaud Arbery, cops responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor. And, that's what I think the conversation should be around. Like, why are we talking about a form of protest that may or may not take place in the fall, when there's a much greater protest? There are more people in the streets than there is in the entire NFL. And so why aren't we talking about this global outcry that is going on, that players are actually participating? Like, why are the players in the streets? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the form of protest that they're taking now. Why are players speaking out now Why are players being engaged in their community and meeting with legislators and meeting with activists right now? So let's just talk about that.
So let's talk about that, Demario Davis, then. What do you want people to do? Like, if you could, I'll give you my platform, our platform here at this show. What do you want people to do when they hear you and hear your fellow NFL players take to the streets and want change?
Well, I think we should look for, justice for these families and understand that we can't really bring justice to these families because, we can't bring them back. That would be real justice, but we can honor those families and first convicting, the cops that are responsible for these murders. And I think that will go a long way towards being symbolic of changes on the way. And after we convict the cops that are responsible, we can change the way that we do policing in America. After we in America know how to respond to crisis. After 9/11, we changed the way that we go through airports. You'll never go through an airport and it be the same. You change up the entire process, change the way that the TSA workers check you. So we can change the way. We certainly can change the way that we do policing in our country. I think, there are a ton of good police officers. We need to find a way to empower those good police officers to help, eradicate, the police department of bad cops. I think we need to find ways to empower prosecutors to be able to prosecute the bad cops when they do wrong things. And there'd be a greater sense of accountability. There's a bill on the floor right now about to be passed, or that we're hoping to get passed, that puts an end to qualified immunity. Pretty much that lets police officers move untouched, and so things of that nature that helps us, change the way that we do policing in our country. I think that's first, and then we need to be again attack. Racism is in the heart, but we can attack the racial injustice structures that exist in our country. And so if we, all the people who are moving and saying, hey, we want to help the black community, this is how. Like, let's begin with justice, and let's put an end to black people being brutally murdered in the streets. And then, let's work to end all these racial injustice structures that exist in our country.
Demario Davis here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then again in your own, I guess, football house. Is everything, would you say, cool now with you and Drew and Bree, and is there, can you at least share that coming out of your conversations?
Well, I think for any growth to happen, there has to be bridges, and so that's two sides, coming together. I think there has to be these sides that admit to wrongdoing and say, you're gonna prove with action that your words and your desire for reconciliation is there, and on the other side there has to be grace, and then from there you're able to move on and focus on the bigger mission, which is all of us working together for the end goal. And so I think our locker room can very much be a model to the rest of the country of how we heal from our past. And so there's been wrong that's been done against a specific people group, and there has to be action first, to say, we want to reconcile, and their action showing that their the desire for reconciliation, and then there has to be a grace that allows for that reconciliation to happen. And then once that bridge has been formed, then we're working together. We can work together towards solutions,
now,
and live peaceful in the house together.
And in terms of action, again, I know, we try to not stray into the political, but there was a tweet from Drew Brees to the President of the United States essentially explaining that his public stance about the flag is something that he has heard from his teammates, and about what he said about never agreeing with anybody who does that. He has now, after the conversations with you as not just you, I imagine, but your teammates, that we can no longer use the flag to turn people away or distract them from the real issues that face our black communities. And it was a tweet directly to the president. What did you think of that, Demario?
Well, I would just say, I would encourage all of America, Andrew, to follow up on those actions, those words. Drew made a statement where he's pretty much saying he has overlooked the black community and wants to start working to help it. I would encourage everybody in America to follow. And if Drew does that, that's leadership. And then America has a model to follow of what that should look like. And, this problem that exists in America is going to take all of us to fix it. And that's where we have peace. And that's what I meant by Drew when I said it's leadership for him to say what he's going to do. But leadership is most importantly marked by action. And I think that he has the opportunity to lead America in what action should look like in assisting and helping alleviate the burdens of the black community.
Demario Davis here on the Rich Eisen Show. And again, I'm part of me is like, I don't know if I should want to bring it up. I mean, bring it up, but because again, we are talking about issues that affect so many people, as you have mentioned. It's not at the grassroots of trying to root out this awful scourge of racism, but players, colleagues of yours in the NFL are saying that one way for the NFL to help matters, Carlos Hyde in particular, is to say Colin Kaepernick should get a job. Would you agree with that being a necessary course of action for the NFL, Demario Davis?
Well, I would go as far as to say that, though this does take away from the ultimate conversation, I would go as far as to say, as it pertains to having a problem with Colin Kaepernick taking a stance against police brutality, that he is definitely owed an apology, by the NFL and everybody else who said that they were on the wrong side of it, and saying he shouldn't have took that stance. So I definitely think he's owed an apology. And so what that looks like after that, I don't know. But I definitely do believe he's owed an apology. But I think as far as the NFL goes and anybody goes, all people can do is control your industry. And so if you want to really help, it's to be marked by action. Be the example. Not have the words, but be the example to the world of what that looks like.
So before I let you go, let's call everybody's attention to www.56manofgod.com. You are creating a Man of God mask for people to wear in practicing social distancing, because, yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic, too. And you're donating proceeds to the families, to the Floyd, Arbery, and Taylor families. Is that correct, Demario?
That is correct.
And what else are you doing? You're visiting 5 cities in 5 days right now? You're being about it. You're in the streets.
Yep. Trying to be. You got to get on the ground and hear the people. And change happens locally. And so we were in Atlanta yesterday, and we're in D.C. today. And, we're kind of gonna hit different cities and kind of figuring it out as we go. But it's about being on the ground with the people, hearing the problems, because if you want to have solutions in these communities, you have to go to the people and hear from them. And once you hear from the people, you'll know what type of solutions need to be made.
So people can follow you on Instagram, D56Davis as well. You were posting some photographs of your stint in your stay in Atlanta yesterday. You're in the nation's capital today, and everyone should tune in to see where you're going next. Do you expect to be in training camp in July, Demario? Do you expect that this is all going to be worked out health-wise, and you're going to have a playing season? Do you think?
I don't know. I trust the people who have to make those decisions, that when it's safe for everybody, that we all can collectively, get back moving and do whatever we need to, whatever we need to get done in that time. I try to focus on the moment, try to focus on the day that's in front of us. I trust the people who have to make that decision of when we return back. And when it's safe for everybody, that's when, I hope that we're able to get back going.
Okay. And then one last thing about that meeting last week is it's true that it was widely reported that Shaq zoomed in. Shaq was part of the conversation?
As I said before, I ain't ever going to speak on something that was private.
He's like 9 feet tall, Demario. You can't miss him. I mean, even though he might have been in a little square on your screen, but you're not even going to let that out of Fight Club, huh?
Yeah, man. On those Zoom calls, you never know who on there.
Okay. You never know. Yes, Sean Payton knows a lot of people. Demario, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you doing what you're doing and being about it. And people can go to 56manofgod.com to help raise money and also practice social distancing with the Man of God masks. And I really appreciate. I'm a New Yorker. I appreciated your stint with the Jets too, sir. I really enjoyed watching you play.
Hey, I appreciate you, Rich. Always a pleasure.
Right back at you. Thank you. That's Demario Davis here on the Rich Eisen Show. Not going to allow much out of that meeting, but it does seem like
we've seen reports that Shaq was there.
Huh?
We've seen.
But you won't even say that. Shaq was there.
Shaq was there.
How does he fit into that little
I'm not sure.
Square?
I don't know.
Okay, when we come back, Todd Gurley has passed his physical.
Hey.
That's answered all his questions about him, right? Correct? Yeah, we'll hit that. Let's take this phone call. Ken in California, you're here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's up, Ken?
Morning, Rich.
Morning.
I appreciate the millions of dollars that athletes, politicians, Hollywood, wealthy people are donating to the social justice issue. I really appreciated what Michael Jordan said. I believe he was going to donate $100 million to the cause.
Over 10 years, yes, sir.
Pardon?
Yes, over 10 years.
Yeah, over 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that has hit it on the head for the need for the black community. He indicated that he would like a portion of that money to go help educate black kids. If you go into the cities today and you see these education these black kids are getting, their class levels are just super down. We've got to start there. If we could allow these kids to get better education, I think it would affect it significantly.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you for calling and sharing that. Well, I mean, we could give the lesson here that public schools are based on real estate taxes and how that would affect certain property taxes and how it affects schools and levels of class levels in terms of how many kids are in there and parents sending kids to these schools where teachers don't make nearly as much as they should. Again, it's just about being about. That's why, here's Demario saying, "Hey, we got to do this. We get this bill's being passed. We've got to have these action items." And then here I am, member of media. Are you going to kneel? What happens if you kneel? Right? Hey, you're kneeling. Why is the NFL allowing kneeling? Jerry Jones, what do you think about the kneeling? And then we're not talking about the
completely missing the point.
But in terms of football, I had to ask, what do you think of what Drew said? Right. He did. But nobody's going to talk about what happened in that meeting, I guess. It'll be about a book later on or whatever Drew would like to share at some point. Our profiters say we won't see him on Yahoo Finance again.
Probably not.
We're back at 844-204-RICH, number to dial NBCSN and Yahoo and also Sirius XM Channel 211. 844-204-RICH, number to dial. We'll take your phone calls here on the Rich Eisen Show. Dr. Alan Sills, we will page the good doctor, the chief medical officer of the National Football League, as the NFL has come out with a club facility protocol for the 2020 season on players and what they need to do to be socially distant within the construct of a locker room. My gosh, you want to talk about, hey, look, the NBA and baseball and the NHL is going to try. Nobody's got 53 players in a locker room. That's a lot. So Dr. Sills will be joining us, and then Karl Ravech will join us. Hey, if the NFL's figuring out how to play football, don't you think Major League Baseball should figure out how to slice up the pie a little bit here?
It doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere close to
Ravi will
baseball
join us.
Season.
Okay. Todd Gurley passed a physical, according to our friend Adam Schefter. And if Adam Schefter says it, it happened.
Fact.
Todd Gurley passed a physical. Right? And we heard from Dirk Cutter, and then the day Dirk Cutter said it, we had their head coach on this program. Offensive coordinator, head coach, all saying, hey, we do not know what we're going to get until we get Todd Gurley in here. We talked to the Rams.
Yeah, Todd was talking about getting his money.
Right. No. Well, what I'm saying is that we had Thomas Dimitroff, the general manager, on here. Well, they talked to the Rams, and they're tight. Dimitroff, Les Snead came from the Falcons organization. They have each other's numbers. They sign him, and now he's finally passed his physical on June 9th. So everything's fine with the knee then. If you pass the physical, if a doctor says, hey, look, the knee's kind of falling apart here, or hey, the knee can't hold up over rigors of 16 games, or the knee needs to have your running back riding a stationary bike in the middle of the fourth quarter of most important games that the rest of the fan base, including everybody who used the first or high second round draft choice on him in a fantasy league, is wondering, why is he on a bike right now? Honestly, over the last year and a half, the question about Todd Gurley hasn't been like, how far can he take the Rams?
Nope.
Okay. The question of him is like, why is he on a bike right now? Or why is C.J. Anderson in the game?
Could have been MVP in 2017.
Or why is Malcolm Brown getting that touch from the 1 yard line?
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating.
We will never know the answer. We've had Sean McVay in this chair right next to me.
Unless
Les Snead in this chair right next to me. Asked him point blank, what's up with this guy's knee?
Don't know.
Nothing. Nothing wrong with the knee. Well, so says the Falcons team doctor now. We will never know the answer, will we? You know what we'll never know the answer to?
What else?
Here's some other.
I love these.
Here's NFL Bermuda trial. Remember, Mike, you won't remember this. Mike Del Tufo. Remember the In Search Of?
In Search Of. The Bermuda.
Was it Leonard Nimoy was the host of In Search Of?
Noah's Ark, Bermuda Triangle.
Sasquatch.
Was this a show?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
it was,
In Search Of.
In Search Of.
When we were kids.
Yeah.
Scared the crap
It
out
did.
of me.
It did.
Scared the crap out of me to see
Bermuda
the blurry photograph of
the
Sasquatch.
And they always
my
uncovered
God.
like one little piece of evidence
Just in
that
case.
was new,
I know.
just to kind of entice you. Oh, maybe they found him.
And they had Spock.
Exactly.
This aired 1977 to 1982.
Dude,
yeah.
What a run.
That's a big
they're
run.
In search of a lot. They should be
What are the-
if
what
there
are
was
the things they
if there was
searched
an
for?
NFL in search of in search of why is Gurley always on the bike? Also in search of, sorry Seattle fans, how the hell did Marshawn Lynch not get the football against the Patriots? How the hell did that happen? And then Malcolm Butler, who caught the interception years later, Super Bowl versus Philadelphia, played one single special teams snap. That's it.
I think the Eagles just scored again.
That's it. Why?
Could have used him.
In search of the reason why Malcolm Butler, who is etched in Super Bowl lore with the most mind-blowing, game-changing, history-altering interception, you could make that case in the history of this great game.
Oh, yeah.
That guy was deemed unusable by Bill Belichick. Because if he was being disciplined, why was he active? Why are you using a crucial roster space in the biggest game of the year against a high-powered offense that was crushing you? How do you not even in the third or fourth quarter, if you are disciplining him, saying, we'll deal with that another day. We need to get Butler in the game. In search of that. And then the last in search of involves a certain quarterback. Over the last 10, 15 years, He's played for everybody, pretty much. He's played for everyone.
I can get you an exact number.
Okay.
Here. Hold on.
He's played for everyone. He sees windows this big, like 2 inches by 2 inches. And he's like, I don't care what the defense, and I know what the defense reads. I'm smart. I went to Harvard.
8 different teams.
This guy getting chance after chance after chance after chance and is one of the most exciting quarterbacks you've ever seen play. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who year after year after year does what he does. And this year, quarantining, having a beard that matches his head. It's perfectly symmetrical. That's another thing. In search of how does Ryan Fitzpatrick do it? This guy is as much of a mystery as why was Malcolm Butler active and only played one special teams play? Why didn't Marshawn Lynch get the ball? And why is Todd Gurley on the bike? That, in the last 10, 15 years, we will never get the answers to these football questions. Never. And I'm not fine with it. I am not fine with it. I'll keep doing it. We need to have a football in search of. Okay, Dr. Alan Sills of the National Football League, Chief Medical Officer and Neurosurgeon. And then Karl Ravech, that's coming up. And your phone calls at 844-204-RICH in our final hour on this busy Wednesday. You see stuff that's on the walls here when you walk in. There's a Goodfellas poster that I've had forever.
Really?
Yes.
Where'd you get it?
I got it at a charity auction.
Huh.
You've taken it off the wall.
Yeah, it's not my signature.
What do you mean it's not your signature?
This is not my signature, buddy.
Down there?
You got ripped off.
No, I did not.
Yeah,
You're kidding me.
I don't do a frou-frou L like that. And
So-
I don't cross it.
So that is
Like
not
that.
yours, because it's signed by you, De Niro, and Pesci, and I spent at least 4 figures on this thing.
Get out of here.
Yes.
You're a sucker. I mean, I could sign it for real.
Yeah.
At least I could double it.
Do it. Do what you wish. If that is, do you know if that's Pesci's? Do you know if that's Joe's?
No, that's him.
No, I know that's him.
I know.
You sure?
No, we'll take care of it later, Rafi.
Yeah. What do you got? He's got an axe. Are you serious?
Do you want the real?
Yeah, sure. But you know, I mean,
it's gonna hurt the.
Okay. You're.
Oh no, it doesn't. Oh, that's me.
You just smacked yourself
a heart attack. We'll do it later.
Okay.
It's not me.
Yeah, you just banged yourself. You just cracked the glass, so we could take it out. Smash the glass. I mean, you got at this point.
It's not glass. It's not really glass.
It's like a plexi.
But we'll do it. We'll fix it.
Okay.
But you got ripped off.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
How are you feeling now, Rich? Knowing this
He's holding onto the axe.
All right, so ask me a question.
Oh my gosh. You put the axe down. This is fantastic. I don't even know where to go with this, because that has been one of my most prized possessions for some time, and you are the real McCoy saying that it's not your signature.
Yeah, no, it's not. I initialed it to make it.
Yes. Right for Gazy, and then we're done.
This is the Rich Eisen Show.
Who the is that guy?
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
So, Ariel Helwani, is Conor McGregor the new Brett Favre of sports?
Download and podcast at richeisenshow.com.
Do I think he will fight again? Yes. I just think he's very frustrated right now.
Earlier on the show, Washington Post columnist Robert Klemko, New Orleans Saints linebacker Demario Davis. Coming up, NFL Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sills, plus ESPN MLB host Karl Ravech. And now, it's Rich Eisen.
Final hour of this show on the air, NBCSN, Sirius XM, Channel 211, YouTube.com/Rich Eisen Show. I am your humble host here, and we appreciate that you've been with us. We had an interesting chat with Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints last hour. He would not talk about what the team talked about last week in a highly covered team video conference a couple days after Drew Brees said what he had to say on Yahoo Finance. And then also... Demario saying that the league owes Colin Kaepernick an apology. Do you think that will ever come? That would be quite something, even though the commissioner said we were wrong. He said those words, "We were wrong." Is what he said. And he also said the three words, "Black Lives Matter." That was all new, and we'll see how this all reverberates, because Demario said it's about actions and not just words. Karl Ravech will join us shortly here from the worldwide leader in sports, my old friend from my Sports Center days, Baseball Tonight host, baseball maven, the guy who broke the news that the league, Major League Baseball, had delivered the yet another proposal to players, and this was welcome news since it seems like they're not talking very often. We'll get the latest from Karl on a playing season with Major League Baseball. Our poll question, Chris, why don't you update it right there on the Rich Eisen Show?
Yeah, talking about Dalvin Cook today and running backs. So looking at the class of 17, loaded running back class, which back would you pay next? Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Aaron Jones. Alvin Kamara kind of running away with this today, boys, 60%.
Well, I mean, I guess I put my thumb on the scale. I love Aaron Jones, man.
Aaron Jones had, 18 touchdowns last year?
He's probably getting paid less than what Dalvin Cook is being paid for the next year.
Let me take a look.
You never know, but you'll take a look at that. In the meantime, the question is about a 2020 playing season. What will it look like in the NFL in the world of COVID-19? I have in my hands 9 pages that was kind of the meat of the league memo that went out to all 32 teams about protocols for the 2020 season, facility protocols when players are expected to be back, hopefully, later on this summer. And the chief medical officer of the National Football League, Dr. Sills, we paged him. Did he call in, Chris, paging Dr. Sills?
Oh, yeah, he's on.
Dr. Sills, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Let's get right into it here, Dr. Sills. What would you want fans to know about these 9 pages that I'm referring to, the club protocol portion of the memo that went out yesterday?
I would want everyone to know that a tremendous amount of research and review and discussion and collaboration went into that. We had a number of joint task forces that were set up between the NFL, the NFL Players Association, bringing together medical experts, infectious disease experts, team doctors, athletic trainers, players, all those voices putting together to really think about what's the data telling us, what is the science showing us, and with one simple goal in mind, which is how can we mitigate risk and try to keep players, coaches, and staff and everyone as safe as possible during this pandemic while we approach our season.
Well, it seems the spine of this is to place personnel into a tier. There's 3 tiers. I'll give you the floor on what those tiers are for you to explain to people.
Well, I think what we recognize is that you're going to have really not just consideration about players, but an entire team environment of people that are going to be together every day. So it's players, it's coaches, it's support staff, it's medical staff. And those individuals are going to be in and around the facility and also on the practice field. And when you're in your facility, certainly you can wear a mask. You can space things out, observe physical distancing, some of the standard public health measures. But when you get on the football field, we all know that football and physical distancing really don't go together. So in that sense, those people who are in that close tier together, those first 2 tiers, share risk with each other in terms of transmission, and they also share responsibility in the sense of what they're doing off the field and away from the facility to make sure they keep themselves as safe as possible. So all of those individuals that we like to think of as one ecosystem where, again, they're going to have many of the similar risk factors and the same factors around transmission. So we'll be testing them and screening them and caring for them and trying to protect them in the similar way. It's also important to note that we want to limit the numbers in that because obviously the more people that you bring in, the more you increase that risk. So we've asked clubs to really work with us on that and determine how many people really need to be in sort of those inner circles of people that will share those day-to-day risks with each other.
Well, and in terms of that, Dr. Alan Sills, I mean, you take a look at a training camp and the number of people, just players alone, can number well above what any locker room could handle when you've got to make sure that lockers are a certain distance apart. What are you and the league instructing these teams to create extra space? I mean, how are you going to handle that sort of thing?
There's no question that this is going to require a lot of challenging and thoughtful and creative solutions, but we have done indeed just that. And we've talked and worked with teams, and part of sending these protocols out is to give them the chance to prepare and to think about those things. I think one of our team athletic trainers summed it up best. He said, this is not going to feel or look normal because it's not going to be normal, meaning that things that we've become accustomed to, our day-to-day routines, whether it be the layout of the facility or how we conduct meetings or how we conduct practices, all of those things are going to be likely to change this season, and they're going to change to try to mitigate risk and to keep everyone safe. So there will be a lot of accommodations that have to be made, and again, that's things, for example, taking meals together. You know, players would typically come in and staff would all eat together in one area. You know, we have to change how that's done, not only how the food's prepared and distributed, but how people actually consume it. So basically everything in the operation of the team is going to have to go through that thoughtful review through the lens of how can we mitigate risk and make this as safe as possible for everyone.
Right, and there's, you know, obviously we're hearing other leagues that are trying to do this, talking about creating a community where everybody's in one spot. The NBA in particular talking about Disney World right now. We'll see what the NHL comes up with, but the NFL's not going to do that, right? I mean, there's going to be just one facility that everyone's going to be at for training camp, and then the playing season is just going to be. What are you telling the players going into the playing season?
Well, again, we have a lot of communication regularly with our colleagues at the NFL Players Association, but we all did not feel that we could take a 6-month season, which is what our season ends up being, actually more than 6 months when you add in training camp, and ask everyone to stay isolated at one location, away from family, away from social network support structure. I mean, that just felt like an impractical request. And additionally, you can't keep people locked down endlessly and create some type of sterile environment. So we think that it's a better approach is to do all that we can to mitigate risk within the facility and within the areas of football, and then to do a lot of education for all the stakeholders that what we do away from the football facility also really matters here. We have to really continue to follow the best practices in terms of wearing a mask, frequent hand washing, social distance, physical distancing, these types of things, because that's what's going to help us all keep each other safe. And then we'll layer in with that an aggressive screening and surveillance testing program should someone be exposed or contract illness either outside or inside the facilities.
Where are you on that subject right now?
Yeah, we're in very active discussions, again, among all of our advisors and in the league and the Players Association together, and I'm optimistic that we will see some updates on that in the very near future. Again, we have to recognize that this is very much a moving target, and all of these protocols that you talked about, they're going to have to be very flexible and adaptable because our knowledge is going to continue to change. We've got a long time from now to the start of our season, and we're going to learn a lot more about this virus. We'll learn a lot more about the pandemic. We should take that knowledge and make sure that we're updating and modifying those protocols to reflect the latest and best science.
Now, I know, Dr. Sills, that you're a doctor. You rely on science. You rely on science-based conversation. But where do you and the league want to be? I mean, do you want to be in a spot where it's just if somebody does test positive for COVID, they're just removed for a couple of days, depending on whatever the CDC requirement will be for quarantine at the time? Where do you want to be in terms of keeping a league going when a player tests positive?
Well, where we want to be is squarely in line with the public health guidance. I think you've seen throughout this pandemic that that's been our strategy. And, you could look back, for example, to the draft and see that the challenge that we took upon ourselves was how can we conduct this draft but still do so in accordance with the current public health guidelines and what's being recommended to keep everyone safe, and also model that best behavior. So we're going to take the same approach here. We will have a very detailed protocol for if someone tests positive, how they should be isolated, how should be treated, and how they may eventually return to play. But I think, and we've said this repeatedly, we expect that there will be new positive cases as long as this disease remains endemic. That doesn't mean that our protocols failed or that someone didn't do their job on their personal responsibility. As long as this disease is endemic, there'll be new positive cases. And so our goal is to identify those as quickly and early as we can in the infection window, remove those individuals away from everyone else to keep everyone else safe, and then make sure they receive the appropriate care, and then return them to competition or to their role as soon as it's safe to do so.
So is it going to be sort of like, for the lack of a better phrase, I know you're a neurosurgeon, you know about the concussion protocol. Is there going to be like a COVID-19 protocol where somebody has to pass to come out of a COVID-19 protocol?
Absolutely. I think that's a useful analogy. And, hey, I always appreciate you putting it in terms I can understand as a neurosurgeon. But,
that's all I got. I got nothing else for you on that. I can't go any further than that.
I think that's a helpful way to think of it is, yes, there will be a roadmap to follow and make sure that everyone receives that appropriate treatment. And again, that will be constructed not only in conjunction with our medical staff, but what are the current CDC and other public health guidelines, as well as what our experience has been from other leagues. I think one other important thing to point out here is we're in regular communication with other pro sports leagues, certainly throughout North America and around the world, and we're learning from each other about their initial experiences about how to return sports and how to conduct these protocols. So all of that will help inform those decisions.
Then obviously testing is something that you're still formulating. Is the idea to have point-of-care testing where somebody comes to work, they are tested every day or every other day, and the results are as accurate as possibly can be, but back in hand within minutes? What's the goal there?
Yeah, I think that's a useful overall construct. We're still determining what the exact schedule would be. But again, obviously we would like to test people frequently, and this is what we would call surveillance testing, meaning these are asymptomatic individuals. We'll have a screening protocol so that if someone has symptoms, we're obviously going to isolate them on symptoms alone. But we want to have a surveillance screening testing protocol that allows us to test all individuals in those tiers that we mentioned before on a very frequent basis so that we can hopefully detect someone as early as possible with a new infection, hopefully even before they're manifesting symptoms so that we can, again, remove them and isolate them, as you said. So that's the goal of a testing program. It will be done on sites local to the team, and the results reported back so that, as you said, we make sure that anyone who's coming into the team environment has indeed been cleared. And I think you extend that also towards game days where you want to make sure that everyone, as they come to participate in the game, has gone through a similar type of testing.
What are your plans? Are there plans to outfit face masks with actual N95 material? There's talk of that being possible, that every face mask has a mask built within it. Is that possible?
Well, I would say we're exploring a number of different options, again, very collaboratively with the Players Association. We have a number of consulting engineers that we work with on both of our groups. And so all ideas are on the table and all options are being looked at because, again, our goal is to mitigate risk as much as we possibly can. So I would say we have very active discussions about those types of devices, and we continue to see what makes the most sense and does the best job for mitigating risk for our players while still being compatible with the game of football.
I also couldn't help but noticing with Tier 1, again, in this club facility protocol for the 2020 season, Dr. Alan Sills, a couple more minutes left with the Chief Medical Officer of the National Football League. I couldn't help but notice that it wasn't a requirement that masks be worn by players, coaches, athletic trainers when they're around, because it is specifically mentioned for Tier 2 individuals. Are you planning on just saying, you know what, players are around each other and within the facilities, they're not going to be required to wear masks?
No, that's actually not what we said initially in most of these protocols. We've stated that masks are not worn on the field during the athletic competition for those Tier 1 individuals. But when they're in the facility, if they're in meeting rooms, if they're in dining areas, we do anticipate that masks and other PPE will be appropriate. And I think that's one important point. Sometimes people say, well, gosh, if I'm being tested, maybe I don't need to bother with all that. And we don't feel that way for several reasons. First of all, no test is 100% accurate. There are always, some things that are not going to be caught by your testing program. And secondly, the time development and the course of symptoms and when someone's infectious, is still to be worked out. And thirdly, again, the responsibility of others in the testing environment. So I think that, just because someone's being tested doesn't mean they don't need to wear PPE. The real thought behind the testing is there's certain situations in football, as we've talked about on the field, where PPE can't be fully worn, and so there is some risk exposure there. And so that's the thought why the testing adds in some extra layer of safety above which PPE alone would.
Well, I'm glad, I wanted to bring that to the fore, and you gave the answer that you gave, because so many people do look to the NFL for leadership on so many different fronts. And I'm talking about society in general. And that's important for people to know about wearing masks writ large as we go about our businesses. Even if you've been tested, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't wear one. So I guess my last question for you is, what can you tell people who are reading about possible therapeutics? I imagine you are on the front lines with the NFL in connecting with drug companies and finding out whether there could be some sort of medication that's either out there as a drug that's being used for other purposes right now that could be repurposed to help the fight of COVID-19, or even shorten the amount of time that somebody could be within what we just established, potentially a COVID-19 protocol. What can you tell people about what you know about therapeutics for the fall?
Well, I remain very optimistic that we're going to see some major advances made in therapeutics, and really in all these areas. And I think one point to keep in mind that's related to that is, I know that for all of us, it feels like since we started this, when everything shut down with the first positive cases, that feels like, roughly 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, right.
I mean, it feels like a very long time. It's actually only been about 3 months. And there's an equal amount of time, or a little more time, in fact, in front of us between now and the start of the NFL regular season. And so the point is, think about how much we've learned, how much knowledge has been gained, how much more we know today than we did early in this pandemic. I'd expect us to make similar jumps in knowledge, because there's so much work being done on therapeutics, on testing, on the epidemiology. And that work is certainly going to inform us. We're going to keep that on the forefront, and I'm hopeful that some of those therapeutics indeed will come into play. But again, we're just going to have to let the medical science work its way through. 3 months is a very long time to us to stay at home and to isolate. That's a very short time in the scientific world for development of things like vaccines or new therapeutics. So we'll have to remain patient, but we're certainly monitoring that very, very closely.
Okay, and I guess then that's my last one for you. You mentioned vaccine. So many people out there want to know about fans in the stands and whether they need one to feel comfortable returning. Where are you on that subject with fans in the stands and your expectation of a vaccine potentially in time for, let's just say, a playoffs for an NFL season in 2020?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to predict when a vaccine may be available. I mean, vaccine development is a lot tougher than people think. If you've been around the medical world for a while, you know that there are a lot of starts and stops with that. And so I think that we will get to the point of having a vaccine. It's just very, very difficult to put a timeline on that. But I think that will certainly get here. I think in the meantime, as far as fans go, we've expressed repeatedly we would like to have fans be present if it's possible to do so, meaning if it's safe to do so. So, again, we'll continue to work with the public health authorities. We'll look at what the state of the knowledge is. We'll be informed by what other leagues around the world and our own country have learned and have done in that regard. And we'll make the best and the safest decision at that point in time. And as we mentioned before, what happens in September could be very different from what happens in January. We'll just have to continue to be flexible and to adapt as new knowledge comes out.
All right, Dr. Sills, I appreciate it. Thank you. I don't know if I could put anything more in neurosurgeon terms or doctor's terms. I did my best in this conversation.
You did a great job, and thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. That's Dr. Alan Sills, NFL Chief Medical Officer. I did get a labor law degree on the lockout. I did get that, right?
I mean, Rich, you were on for hours. You were like the king of the
Tulane Law gave me an actual...
I do remember that.
Gabe Feldman?
Yes.
Gabe Feldman gave me an actual piece of paper.
That's right.
I don't know if I'm going to have a medical, like a minor in epidemiology by the end of this, but...
Oof. Just let it happen.
I think it's going to happen. You just heard that. Question about Major League Baseball playing season. I'll put my labor law hat back on with Karl Ravech when we come back. Now, the issue with Gabe, when I went to his law school class,
you physically
at
went
Tulane
down
Sports
there?
Law. I was in New Orleans for a Thursday night game or for a game, and I went and I met his class, and he conferred me the degree in front of the class.
Look at you.
And he gave it to me. He gave it to me in like a beautiful. I remember it's green. It's Tulane. It's green. It was like a green little, case, small little case. Remember, I brought it back to my hotel room. I'm like, hey, I got this degree. I opened it up. Gabe had not signed it.
Oh no,
no. So it was.
I do not know where it is today.
Oh, Rich, you don't have the degree.
I do not know where it is today. It's somewhere. It could be in the green room closet somewhere. Because again, everything when this show started that was in my house, that Susie's like,
get it out.
Yeah, what are you doing here?
It's like
did you have any?
By the way, so I have 3 degrees.
Wow.
To tell that to Irv. Yeah, no, I do. I do. I've got 3 degrees.
2 degrees and a piece of paper.
I have a bachelor.
It's not even signed.
A BA in communication.
It's not signed.
I have a bachelor's of science in journalism, a master's of science in journalism. I have a master's degree of science. And I've got a master's degree. Did I mention that? In journalism. I am 1 degree shy of being Dr. Television, as you know, I like to say around here. But I do have a degree in sports law that I do believe I did get Gabe to sign. Eventually.
But you don't know where it is.
I don't know where it is.
Yeah. So it doesn't.
If I did, it would be on the friggin' wall.
Doesn't count.
And I lost all my hair from the lockout.
Crazy.
I mean, seriously, check out NFL Total Access in 2011. That's when it was beginning to go.
Oh, it was. I remember.
All right. That was 2011, that lockout. That was 12 years post Last Dance where you saw me with all that cabbage. All right? I don't know where I'm going with this.
I don't either.
No, we were saying that you have the
But
degree.
I've got a law degree, and I should have it on the wall. That's what I'm saying.
Here we go. Hang on.
Oh, Don Bowie would like to bring it back, the conversation back to the National Football League. Hey, man. Look at this. Last 3 seasons, Dalvin Cook has more rushing yards per game than Christian McCaffrey. The receiving yards is no. The receiving's no contest.
Let's go to touchdowns, boys.
But look at the games.
Pay the man.
Look at the games played.
Look at the games played. Exactly. Pay the man.
Pay who?
Cook. Pay him.
Oh my gosh. I don't know that 29 games played is that's
20 more touchdowns.
If you eat up your salary cap to that amount of money, he's got to play if I knew Dalvin Cook was going to play the same amount of games as Christian McCaffrey, sold. Good food for thought, everybody. 844-204-RICH, number to dial when we come back. My buddy Karl Ravech from the worldwide leader in sports. Podcast One is how you can listen to us every day on demand. You say, I demand to hear Mike Del Tufo. That's what they say.
They should be.
And we say, yes, podcast1.com/Rich Eisen. That's how you get the Del Tufo on demand you require. We demand baseball as well. We demand it. I don't know if we're going to get it. My buddy from ESPN who had a nice scoop yesterday, Karl Ravech, joining me back here on the show. How you been, Karl?
I'm good, Rich. And I know now if I need a good attorney, Rich Eisen is the guy I'm calling.
Hey, Karl, man, that lockout, I got a Tulane law sports degree conferred upon me by Gabe Feldman. Unfortunately, he did not sign it, and I did not notice that until after I left his presence, so I think I still have an unsigned degree somewhere. But that lockout, man, I learned a lot about labor law, and unfortunately, it seems to be I'm putting it into practice talking about baseball too much lately, Karl.
Well, every time, and I tend to look at what's going on currently differently than I would a labor negotiation, and yet this is dissolved into a labor negotiation as opposed to a way to get your butts back on the baseball field and have the owners have baseball being played again. It has literally become a CBA conversation. The CBA doesn't expire until 2021. This should be solely about getting back on the field during a pandemic, and everybody realizing we're going to lose some money in all of it. We're still going to get paid a hell of a lot of money, but we're going to lose money. And as owners, we're going to have to pay money, and we're going to lose money. That seems to have been lost, Rich, along the way, and that is labor law. You got to remember, as we romanticize about the Yankees and the Mets and the Cardinals and Cubs and Dodgers and Angels, there's no romantics involved in the game at this level. This is a business. It's about what am I going to get and how much am I going to pay. And for those who sit there and say, can't they just, and why don't they just, and don't they understand, the simple answer is no. It has nothing to do with any of the things that we would wish it would have to do with.
So how do we change that, Karl? Because we've already, based on, as John Heyman, our colleague at MLB Network, pointed out, the new proposal has already moved opening day from July 4th to July 10th. We've already lost a week on that calendar. And I know nobody really wants to play into November for many reasons, weather or if the regular influenza season hits when COVID-19 might spike again. That's the last thing you want to do is be blowing into your hand off the mound on November the 3rd and putting your hand on a baseball and putting it into play. So how do we change all this, Karl?
We change it, Rich, by one side recognizing that they have an incredible opportunity. While they're tying all this crap together with the 2021 CBA, recognize that this is a unique situation in our country's history. One of the sides has an opportunity to say, you know what? We do actually recognize what's going on. We do understand that baseball would be important for people as a diversion from all that's going on. We get the idea. They want to see us back on the field and on their televisions and on their iPads and phones and whatever. We understand that. So as a result, we are really going to bite the bullet on this one, and we're going to pay the players a prorated salary for 70 games. Or we're the players, and we're going to take a prorated 80% salary for 70 games, whatever it might be. And while we continuously try to endear the public to our side, the best way to do that now is to say, you know what, we actually do want to listen to what you folks are saying and not just make this about how much we get and how much we spend, but recognize there's a value in coming back. And we will ingratiate you to, if this is important, and it seems to be, our side when it's time to negotiate a new CBA. And if one of these sides is boy enough to become a man in this situation, we'll have a longer season. If not, we'll play 48 games.
What would be the problem with playing 48 games, Karl? Lay that one out for me.
I don't, honestly, Rich, I've always looked at this as an opportunity. I think that however many games there are, this is just me. This is not speaking for anybody but me.
Yep.
I looked at this as an opportunity. Get back on the field. If you want, devise a tournament. The concept of this being remotely considered a season or anything that would have to do with any record books, forget it. Not part of the deal. This is a unique opportunity. Go and devise some type of regular season with a great tournament to get a postseason. I don't even care if you call it a World Series winner. Call it something else. But you had an opportunity to be back on the field before others. You had an opportunity to make this unique and memorable. You had an opportunity to experiment, and yet you're mired in arguments you had in 1981 and 1994. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it's a blown opportunity. So I think the 48, because of the acrimony, Rich, it feels like you've agreed to go on a date with someone you know you don't like, and it's not going to go any further. You're entering into a 48-game season with a whole heck of a lot of bitterness, not only in your own camps, but a bunch of fans who realize you two can't get along. Why would I invest in 48 games when you've told me you're not even invested in it? You're so caught up in your own fights. So I think that's what the problem with 48 is. It's a resignation to an agreement that was made in March, and more proof, we couldn't figure out a way to give you guys 70 to 85 regular season games. We couldn't do it. So, sorry. Here. You know what? We didn't have cheese or sauce on the pizza, but we got some bread. Enjoy the bread.
Enjoy the bread, Karl Ravech. And I guess just to continue on the whole dating analogy, we need somebody to say it's not you, it's me, and really mean it. And come to the table,
exactly.
Right? And really mean it. It's not you, it's me. Who's that person going to be? The commissioner? Is it going to be? Tony Clark? Is it Boris? I'm serious. Let's brass tacks it, hash it all out about what really does need to happen, and who's got to be the one to move here. Karl, not to put you in too much of a spot, but.
No, that's okay. If I were to handicap that, and I'm not sure, Rich, any one of those three you just mentioned would do it, because I think the commissioner answers to owners, and when you have to answer to somebody and you're not making the call, similar with the union, you're answering to all the players. If I were to handicap it and somebody had to, just given where we're at, I would think it would be the commissioner, only because he has historically, and since we've had labor peace, been in the middle of it all. I think he prefers a deal. I think he prefers a deal that benefits the owners, but I think in the end, he prefers a deal versus this 48-game idea. I'm not sure that Scott does, and again, if they were on the other end of this call, they'd say that's bull, and of course we prefer a deal, but it's got to be fair for the players. And I think the commissioner is more in a position to make a deal and say, guys, here's the deal. I'm ready to do this. I think it's important. We're losing $4 billion, whatever it might be. And in other years, this is a multi-billion dollar industry. We'll make it back. And I don't know that anybody would blame the side that does that in the next real CBA negotiation to side with them and say, look, they took one for the team. You're not getting any hometown discounts the next time. I would think if I were handicapping it, it would be Rob, but I'm not holding out hope that anybody's doing it.
Well, I heard the math that you used before as an example, and you said 80% of a prorated salary. So again, you prorate for 70 games, and then you take 20% off that, and that's what the players would make. But that's still 20% less than the 100% that they say that they negotiated in March. And that's my concern here, Karl, that clearly that had there been a collective bargaining agreement already signed, like the NFL was fortunate to have, maybe this acrimony wouldn't be happening, but we are here. My concern is that if the players keep saying, hey, March is March, and we don't care what's happening now because it's March, and you said yes in March, and we said yes in March, and it doesn't matter when, we're sticking with March, that if the owners begin to think that they're negotiating against themselves, they'll walk. That's my concern. If they think that they don't have a partner across the way that's really negotiating.
It's possible. I don't think that the commissioner would allow that, because I don't think, having been through what he's been through in '94,
yep.
And the right-hand man is that he, on his watch, would want the game to stop. I don't think he's going to allow it. I think there's going to be baseball. To your point about the March agreement, and I do believe that this was subsequently discussed amongst the players and Tony, I'm not certain that they recognized the March agreement does stipulate, and most labor lawyers would tell you that March agreement does allow for a negotiation if the games are going to be played in front of empty stands. So while there was 100% of a prorated salary, there is a clause in there which, if you read it, and most labor lawyers will tell you, it says the commissioner has the right to renegotiate with the players on a potential concession on salary if we're playing in front of empty stands. We know we're doing that, especially to start. So I think that your argument would probably, again, I'm not a labor lawyer, I know you are, but I think would lose in court, because there is that stipulation in front of nobody. The 100% prorated doesn't really stand. We have the right to go back and talk about concessions on that.
Were you on SportsCenter yet when there was that strike? When there was that? Were you there?
God,
you were there.
I was chasing owners around streets in New York and Toronto. Paul Beeston ducking in and out of buildings. Bud Selig not wanting to talk about anything, a guy named Richard Ravich who was representing one of the sides who everyone thought was associated or related to me, which wasn't the case. Yeah, none of it's ever fun. And that's why, those of us that are intimately involved with this sport and not the NFL like you are, you're up all night, not necessarily because the KBO is starting in an hour. You're up because you're dealing with a group that just doesn't seem to get it, especially in light of this. I think people would accept the fighting and the bickering and the acrimony if this was a 4 or 5 year deal for the future CBA. This is literally about getting back on the field in 2020, and the lines have been so blurred and the circles have become so concentric they can't see the forest, through the trees.
So, I guess timeline it for me. Deal has to be done by when? When's the strike? When's the stroke of midnight here?
Well, I just it depends on which side you're talking to, but I think that the agreement or the commissioner saying, boys, we're going, and it's 48 games, and we're done negotiating because we don't feel you're negotiating. We wanted to play more games, albeit at a reduced rate on your salary, but we would like to play more games. And if we can't agree to that and you're stuck on 100% of your salary, and they have the right to do that, then we're going to play 48 games. I think within the next 72 hours we should have an answer to that. I really do.
Huh. And then what are the odds that some bold-faced name players who might have an agent in Scott Boras say we're not coming because we're concerned about the health? And,
look, I think if there are legitimate concerns about the health, I think that they're going to be excused and get paid and get service time. I just look at some of the parts of the proposals, and again, when it is literally about the dollar, I understand both sides of the argument. But I think with regards to health and safety, I think it's short-sighted to suggest that any organization would put their employees, baseball players, at any real perceived risk. I think every attempt will be made to make sure the risks are limited. But that is a prerogative, and again, because it's baseball, nothing like that would surprise me. Nothing. That's what we've been conditioned to in this game. And I know you of course are familiar with the way it works. It's never peaceful. It's just not something that's ever smooth.
It's and I hope it doesn't happen this way because unlike '94, Carl, with you being on the front lines of reporting this, you don't have the feel-good edition of the Sports Center to go back to and do. You don't have that feel-good. You don't have the feel-good. We
don't have Pooh Richardson on the court. We don't have Sparky looking in the mirror. We don't have any of that.
Give me your favorite Kilborn story, Carl. Give me your favorite killer story. Do you have one? Come on.
Golly. As I told you, probably 3 weeks into the Kilborn experience.
Yes.
It went from experiment to experience. But 3 weeks in, our buddy Steve Anderson, who was in charge of SportsCenter at that time, I knocked on the door. I said, Steve, I don't get it. I'm not feeling it. The feel-good thing, I don't get any of this. And to his great credit, he said, Carl, please, be patient. You're doing great. You're riding shotgun with a guy who we believe is going to develop, and he did. And I was wrong in my initial judgment. Like, I don't get any of this stuff. The uncle who is behind the shed waiting to tie some boys' ice skates. Here are the Penguins Rangers highlights. Like, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean?
And then he starts talking about Shatner, and then it was Kismet, right? Then you got it.
Shatner. Everything was Pooh Richardson. Every basketball highlight had a Pooh reference in it, even when Pooh wasn't involved in the game.
Oh, my God, Carl.
He's the best.
Oh,
he's the best.
My word. And then did he call you Sparky just from the beginning? Like, did he walk in the door as a newbie and call everyone Sparky, or he had some humility when he walked in the door? He was a little bit humble when he walked in the door.
Wow, that's a legitimate question. If
Thank
he
you,
were, it washed off real quick. But yeah, everybody became Sparky. That was And then that sort of spread through the newsroom. I mean, that was the reference everybody used in regards to everybody.
I know. When I arrived in '96, people were calling me Spark, and I'm like, why am I being called Spark? Because he referred to everyone as Sparky. And you know, I had Killer here on the latest anniversary of ESPN. I lose track how many years it's been. I
saw that. It was beautiful. I'm glad to see. I saw that. And
he came on for a full hour, and he mixed. And it was a feel good. And he brought on. We made martinis. He made martinis, even though I think the ice wasn't to his liking or something. But he fought through it. He fought through it. Carl,
he's always been he's a gamer, which is what we love about him.
He's a gamer. Well, you are too. Bless you for being in the middle of all this, and I hope we get some resolution, man. Because what an opportunity this would be, and it would be
No kidding. No kidding.
Take care, you and your family. Best to you, bud.
Hang in, everybody. Be good.
Same to you. It's Karl Ravech, everyone. Not feeling the feel good.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get this.
I don't get it.
I don't understand a word he's saying. One of my first sports centers.
Those days,
I did a sports center just before, like it was like night 2, night 3 for me. And I don't know why I did it at a sports center earlier than him. He was doing the 2:30 at night, and I think I did the midnight. I don't know what the hell it was. 11 o'clock. Come upstairs. I just did like my 3rd or 4th sports center. I'm feeling good. I had not met Kilborn yet.
Ugh.
He's coming. I remember exactly where it was. He's coming down from the upstairs 3rd floor. I'm on the 2nd floor going into the staircase to go upstairs to my prefabricated cubicle. He's coming downstairs. He walks through the door just fresh from hey, Spark. Good show. Reminds me a lot of what I'm doing. Good show. And he keeps walking. Oh, my gosh. Broke the mold with Craig Kilborn, who's a must follow on Instagram, by the way. Let's take a break. Your phone call is 844-204-RICH. When we come back, don't go anywhere. You know, you remember where you are spatially in a
watching Kilborn
in an office where you loved it when we had him here for that hour. When I told you we've got Kilborn for an entire hour.
You know, I'm a huge Craig fan. Love the Late Late Show. Was big on you back in 2012 about trying to get the Craig wheels moving. And, it took 7 years.
It took a long time.
Took a long time.
Took a while.
Huge fan.
But we got him for a full hour. Everyone check it out on our YouTube.
His Instagram is
amazing.
It's insane.
You know, and we're good friends with Alex Sulkin, who worked on the Late Late Show back in the day.
His Instagram feed right
his
now?
Instagram feed's on fire.
He's doing Marty Walsh.
It's on fire.
He is off. He is off.
I mean,
the
it's
charts.
so good.
Yeah.
He's so witty. Like, it's amazing.
Who? Kilborn or the Sulk?
Kilborn.
Oh, yeah.
Kilborn.
My favorite one the Sulk did the other day was the piano player who hits record at the wrong time on his phone. Where he sits down, he goes like this, like he's going to get ready to play, and then reaches out to the phone like he's hitting record, but instead he hits stop.
Yeah, right.
And then the next thing you see, cut to him just finishing the last note and smiling like he just nailed it. And then he goes, and he screams out the F-bomb. Like, that was funny.
And those are the guys behind Kilby in the...
Man, ESPN is showing some Deutsch Pokal soccer right now.
Oh, yeah, we got it on here. What do we got? German Cup semifinal. Let's go. What's the line on this, Mikey? Get a little action?
No,
I've been playing Xbox soccer.
They just exchanged. I don't know what they just exchanged.
I'm addicted to my Xbox soccer right now.
This guy.
Champions League.
54-year-old
You should pull a big cat and start playing it on online and see how many people come in.
Come and watch?
He started season 2 or season 3.
Why wouldn't he?
He got smoked in the national championship
people are
game.
talking. Somebody called in on Dan's show. What's your best and the worst of the weekend? And somebody's best and worst was Big Cat playing as Coach Doug's. Virginia Tech blew him out. I heard about it.
Smoked in the championship game.
Good for him. I mean, that's making the most of your platform, man.
NCAA 14.
All right, we're back in a second. Eight 844-204-RICH is the number to dial. We're all talking here about what T.J. Jefferson is doing to our golf area here. He's turning it into his own personal sort of set dressing. We have no idea what he's done to the Cedric the Entertainer.
Well, it's like, you know how Susie made you get rid of all of your crap at your house?
Yeah.
That's what TJ's doing now. He's bringing all the stuff, junk,
TJ, do you want to take the floor and actually show what you
putting it on the golf
over
green
there?
over there?
I mean, it's pretty ridiculous what he's doing over there.
You could just walk by.
Go ahead, TJ. I don't know what. I mean, there's all sorts of material that's going on.
To work. Do you have your mic, TJ?
No, forget it. Don't. You know. He doesn't even have a microphone on. What are you doing over there, Mike?
That's not,
you don't even mic
the
up.
audio executive can only.
Oh, the shot's not ready. My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
See?
844-204-RICH is the number to dial. Get the shot ready. I want to hit that in a second here. Let's go to Rick in Minneapolis. He's been waiting a long time. What's up, Rick?
Yeah, Rich, I have this idea that might go a long way to solving racial tensions, and that is that people on a local level would start groups inviting African Americans and Caucasians to meet in large groups, and then pair off one-to-one, and then share with each other at the deepest level their experiences. If that caught on like wildfire across the country, that is a way, mainly for Caucasians, to understand the depth of what blacks have inherited, which we don't understand. But that might go a long way toward ultimately solving the problem. What are your thoughts on that?
Rick, I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I think it just starts with, and I appreciate the call. Here's what I think. It starts with parenting. It starts with kids. It starts with making sure the next generation doesn't see color. I mean, it really is that simple. You know, Susie and I talk to our kids what's going on in the streets. We talk to our kids about what's going on, you know, whenever they do spot it on television. I mean, the TV's been off quite a bit on that front at home. Really, it's all about, you know, not to start. I will not start singing, but you know, the children are our future. You know what I mean? And it's true. It's true. That video that Rex Chapman put out of two kids of different colors running up on the street and hugging each other.
Yeah, kids don't know.
I know and kids don't know, and kids should not know, and should grow up not seeing it or caring about it.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Now, obviously, adults needing to get together, if that's helpful, then we should do it. You know, I don't particularly, you know, mind that idea. I don't know where it would be, and I mean, maybe that's something, again, sports leagues can do. Like, hey, everyone, you want to have, once you're allowed back into an arena, come an hour or two earlier. Select few can get on the floor, get on the field, and have a conversation, right? I don't know.
I mean,
make it a destination for a fan,
easy,
and then you come on and we have this conversation. I guess. 844-204-RICH. So, Don, if you wouldn't mind putting up that graphic that our crack staff put together for the poll question of the day, essentially based on Dalvin Cook wanting to be paid more money than Christian McCaffrey. And our poll question right now, Alvin Kamara is running away with it, right? On which
he's at
60%
right now.
The comparison between Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey, you know, Dalvin's got a leg up on McCaffrey in terms of an average of rushing yards per game. Maybe that's because Dalvin's got, you know, it's not up on the screen. I don't know if you can find it out. I bet you Dalvin's got more long runs than McCaffrey. that Dalvin's ripped off like 50, 60 yarders, right? Like, I don't know. That could have something to do with it. The receiving, though, there's just no comparison. Zero. I mean, McCaffrey is doing it on the ground, in the air. And again, we saw that at his combine. His combine workout, I don't know, again, if that could be YouTubed. His combine workout.
Christian McCaffrey?
Catching was a thing of beauty. It was really the quintessential poetry in motion.
He did the wide receiver workout.
He was amazing. He was better than most wide receivers. He was that, and those numbers show. It's the games played that you can't even compare. I mean, last 3 seasons, 48 games. Oof. You can do the math. What's 16 times 3?
48.
And then Dalvin Cook is 19 games shy of it. Come on. I mean, that's the issue for this kid, because he really, really is a transformational running back. And if he wants to be paid as much as Christian McCaffrey, I do believe he is going to have a problem with the Minnesota Vikings. I really do. Not saying I will never sit here and say somebody does not deserve their money or shouldn't try for it. I just know the way that the business usually works, and that's a tough one. You missed 19 games. That's a tough one. I thought the number was 17. It's actually apparently bigger than that.
Yeah, he needs to put together one of those Zeke Elliott type
The problem is why he has every right to say, I'm going into my walk year in COVID-19. Again, we had Dr. Alan Sills on at the beginning of this hour, and he basically said, it's not going to be normal. It's just not going to be normal. It won't feel normal. Maybe by, week 9, week 10, and hopefully, we're talking about November, which is 5 months from now. Things can be done on the medical front for therapeutics. We could be close to a vaccine. Who the hell knows? But the protocols, by then, maybe they can be as routinized in a sport where routine is crucial, certainly in the mind's eye of a coach. I don't blame him for saying going into this season, it's not going to be normal. I have no idea. Medical staffs and preparing and being ready and having my body ready and having my body recover. It's not going to be anything remotely close to a normal season. We already know it. So getting paid beforehand would be wise and I think a proper maneuver. It's just, not being able to stay healthy at that position. If he's going to demand the moon, it could be a crash landing down to earth. See Gordon, Melvin. Although Rick Spielman may have a different approach than obviously Tom Telesco does and talk about the general managers of both the Vikings and the Chargers respectively. I don't know. But this certainly leapt out at me.
We talked about Drew Lock earlier, Melvin Gordon in that Broncos backfield.
Well, him and Phillip Lindsay, and Drew Lock, and you add to the Cortland Sutton, who's been performing very well.
Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Judy's now in that mix.
Let's go.
Right?
But hey,
there's a Kansas City Chiefs still in that division. Are we talking football right now?
Yeah. Look at us. Who would have thought?
Who'd have thought? It's actual football. I know we're talking about society and we're talking about social issues, and today we're talking about health and safety. But I just thought it would be interesting to have the doctor on the day after these come out. And for a doctor to tell me I did a good job, I'll take it. Should I have said to him at one point?
If you have to ask me, then the answer is,
hey doc, I've got, so I wake up in the morning and this just, and putting my foot down. I've had plantar fasciitis for a while. And I know you're a neurosurgeon. You got a lot going on with protocols and stuff like that. But maybe,
if I rub my foot on a baseball, will it?
It will work.
Will it go away?
It will work.
No chance.
Are you on texting? I know you got an astronaut by texting to call in.
He won't
Can you
trust me.
text a doctor right now and text him and just ask him?
This is the Tommy Lasorda, and I'll even let you use the Tommy Lasorda sign one.
Well,
it will work.
Not to go all Fletch on you here, but I'll rub that Tommy Lasorda baseball all over the place, right? Fletch.
What a great movie.
Punches Tommy Lasorda. I hate Tommy Lasorda. And by the way, the guy whose office that took place in, the actor Joe Don Baker, played the Whammer in one of the greatest movies of all time, The Natural. Just bringing Fletch and The Natural together. I can't help myself. I'm sorry, everybody. I understand some people might say, what the hell's the matter with you? I can't help myself. Wouldn't that be a great reunion, The Natural, for Josh Gad? Robert Redford?
Not a heavy hitter cast, though.
Dude, Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, what's the matter with you?
I mean, there's two.
Glenn Close? What's the matter with you?
Okay.
Barbara Hershey?
Barbara Hershey, that's right.
Barbara Hershey and Hoosiers.
Barry Levinson, Kim Basinger.
All right.
Excuse me.
All right, I'm in. All right, I forgot.
Let's go. Wilford Brimley was the manager.
I mean, Wilford Brimley.
It's the right thing to do.
I mean,
he's
Wilford
somewhere talking about diabetes.
No, I'm sorry. It's diabetes.
Diabetes.
Come on, Wilford Brimley. Wilford Brimley, it's interestingly enough, when he shot The Natural, he was 34 years old. It's very strange.
Wait, is that true?
No.
Oh.
China.
Believed it, though.
I watched a movie the other day, China Syndrome, with him, Michael Douglas, and Jane Fonda.
Sure.
He looked like he was, I don't know how old he was. It was like 77 or 79. It was like, I'm like sitting there going, oh my God.
He looked 80.
Yeah. It's
You know what? It's interesting.
Michael Madsen was in the
Breaking news.
The Natural.
Wilford Brimley was actually the punter in the punt, pass, and kick. It wasn't Andy Reid.
It wasn't Andy Reid.
It was Mike Holmgren.
That how old?
It was Mike Holmgren.
Robert Klemko, Demario Davis, Dr. Alan Sills, and Karl Ravech. I want to thank my guests today, and I want to thank everybody for being out there on this latest edition of The Rich Eisen Show. We'll see you back here on NBCSN and more on Thursday.